I am just a chronicler and welcome you to another video. Since I know many of you watch to relax and fall asleep, I thought it would be nice if you left a comment telling me where you're listening from and if it's raining there. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the episodes. Now, it's time to get comfortable, relax, and begin. The rats got to the manuscripts first. I found their droppings on the stone floor of the crypt and bits of chewed parchment scattered around the wooden shelves. The air was thick with the smell of mold and rotting leather bindings. My candle cast jumping shadows on the walls. I had to catalogue everything in this chamber before sunrise. Brother Gerard wanted a complete inventory by morning prayer. I didn't ask to be here. The order assigned me to Tomar Fortress 3 months ago, fresh from my training as a scribe. I knew how to read and write in 4 languages. I could illuminate manuscripts with gold leaf and crimson ink, but I didn't know what to do about rats eating our sacred texts. The crypt stretched deep under the fortress. Row after row of wooden shelves lined the walls, packed with scrolls and bound volumes. Some were ancient, brought back from the Holy Land by the first Templars. Others were newer records of donations, property deeds, banking ledgers. All of them needed to be logged and organized. I pulled out my writing materials and got to work. Quill, ink, fresh parchment for my inventory list. The candle flickered as I moved along the shelves, noting down titles and conditions. Psalter, water damaged. Book of Hours, binding loose. Chronicle of the First Crusade, rat chewed. 3 hours passed. My back ached from hunching over the texts. The candle had burned down halfway. That's when I found it. A scroll wrapped in black leather, tucked behind a row of mouldering hymnals. No identifying marks on the outside. The leather was soft, almost oily to the touch. It didn't feel like any animal hide I knew. I shouldn't have opened it. That was my first mistake. But I had to record what it was. The parchment inside was thin and oddly smooth. The text was written in a script I'd never seen before. Not Latin or Greek or Hebrew or Arabic. The letters seemed to shift and dance in the candlelight. I squinted at the strange symbols. They made my eyes hurt, but I couldn't look away. The longer I stared, the more they appeared to move and rearrange themselves. Slowly, terribly, they began to form words I could read. Brother Thomas will die at Matins. His heart will stop during the Gloria. I dropped the scroll. It clattered on the stone floor. Brother Thomas was our master of novices. He was healthy, barely 40 years old. This was nonsense. Just my tired mind playing tricks. I picked up the scroll again. The text had changed. Brother Martin will fall from the western tower at Vespers. His neck will break on the courtyard stones. My hands shook. I rolled up the scroll and shoved it back on the shelf. I needed sleep. These long nights in the crypt were affecting my mind. I tried to continue my cataloguing, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that black leather scroll. Just before dawn, I couldn't resist. I had to look one more time. The text was different again. 3 brothers will die before the next full moon. The first in prayer. The second in fall, the third by his own hand. The order's sin must be cleansed in blood. I closed the scroll and sat in the darkness, listening to my heart pound. This was madness. I should burn the thing, but destroying a text, any text, went against everything I'd been trained to do. That morning, Brother Thomas died during Matins. His heart stopped during the Gloria, just as the scroll had written. They found him slumped over in his choir stall, already cold. I didn't sleep that day. Spent hours in the library, searching through linguistic texts, trying to identify the strange script. I found nothing like it in any known language. That evening, Brother Martin fell from the western tower. They said he was checking the battlements before Vespers. No one saw him fall. We heard the impact. I was in the courtyard when they carried away his broken body. I went back to the crypt that night. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the candle. The scroll was where I'd left it. The text had changed again. Brother William cuts his throat tonight. The knife is already in his cell. The guilt of 20 years drives him to it. He cannot bear the weight of what he helped hide. I ran to Brother William's cell. I pounded on his door until he opened it. He stood there in his nightshirt, eyes red, hand behind his back. When I pushed past him, I saw the knife on his bed. He broke down then, confessed everything. 20 years ago, he'd helped hide evidence of corruption in the order, senior brothers taking bribes, breaking vows, practicing forbidden rites. The guilt had eaten at him ever since. I stayed with him until morning. When the sun rose, he was still alive. I'd prevented the third death, but I knew the scroll wasn't finished with us. Each night, I returned to the crypt. Each night, the text was different. It showed me things no one could know. Secret sins of brothers in our fortress. Hidden chambers beneath the crypt where forbidden books were stored. Names of Templars who had betrayed their vows. Some predictions I managed to prevent. Others came true no matter what I did. Brothers died in accidents, illness, suicide. Each death exactly as the scroll foretold. After 2 weeks, I knew I had to tell someone. I went to Brother Gerard, our librarian, showed him the scroll. He read it, hands shaking. The text that day was clear. The Grand Master falls in 3 years. The order burns. Kings and popes conspire. None will survive the purge. Burn it. Brother Gerard said, "Burn it now," but I couldn't. The scroll had shown me too much. The corruption in our order ran deep. Ancient secrets festered in our vaults. The scroll was trying to warn us, trying to force us to confront our sins, before it was too late. I copied down everything I saw in the scroll, filled a dozen parchments with its revelations, hid them throughout the fortress. Someone had to know the truth. Someone had to survive to tell it. Tonight is the spring equinox, in the scroll. This morning, I saw my own death foretold. I will die in the crypt at midnight, surrounded by the books I was meant to protect. Brothers who want the scroll's power for themselves will come for me. I hear their footsteps on the stairs now, heavy boots on stone, keys rattling in locks. I've sealed the scroll in a lead box and hidden it behind the oldest texts. Let them search. They'll never find it. The door is opening. Torchlight spills down the steps. I know their faces, these brothers I once called friends. I see the daggers in their hands. The scroll's last prophecy plays in my mind. The truth dies tonight, but words of power cannot be destroyed. In 3 centuries, another will find these pages. The cycle begins again. I close my eyes and wait for the bite of steel. My only regret is that I won't live to see if the scroll's greatest prophecy comes true. The fall of our order, the death of the Grand Master, the purge that will scatter the Templars to the winds. The first blade slides between my ribs. As my blood soaks into the stones, I know I die protecting something both holy and horrific. Knowledge that was never meant for mortal minds. Truths that will destroy us all. Let history judge whether I was right to preserve it. The end. The desert stretches empty for 50 miles in every direction. I've counted every stone in my tower's walls. Twice, 47 days of penance remain. The sun burns white in a cloudless sky. No one has passed within sight of my post in 13 days. I didn't ask for this assignment. The chapter master handed it down as punishment after I questioned the order's dealings with Muslim merchants. A knight must learn humility through solitude, he said. The Tower of Silence will teach you wisdom. The tower stands alone on a rocky hill, 3 days' ride from the nearest Templar fortress. Its walls rise 40 feet high, barely wide enough for a single man to walk the parapet. A rope pulley brings up water and supplies from the ground. My cell contains a straw pallet, a wooden cross, and a prayer book. Nothing else. My duties are simple. Watch the horizon. Ring the warning bell if enemies approach. Pray 7 times daily. Fast on bread and water. Maintain absolute silence except for prayers. The first week passed slowly. I marked the hours by the sun's movement across the sky. The silence pressed against my ears like a physical weight. At night, I watched stars wheel overhead and listened to wind whistling through arrow slits. The chants started on the 8th night. I heard them just after midnight prayers, faint Gregorian harmonies drifting up from the desert, male voices singing Latin psalms. The sound came from the southeast, where there was nothing but empty sand for 100 miles. My first thought, hallucination from the heat and isolation, but the singing continued, growing clearer. I recognized the melody, the requiem mass for the dead. I peered into the darkness. No campfires, no torches, just endless black desert under stars. But the voices kept singing. They brought back memories I'd tried to forget. The battle at Hatton 5 years ago, Saladin's armies surrounding us, the screams of dying brothers, the choices I made to survive. I slammed my shutters, closed and pressed my hands over my ears. The singing continued until dawn. The next night, it started again. Closer this time, I could distinguish individual voices in the choir. They sounded familiar. Brother Michael's clear tenor, but Brother Michael died at Hatton, throat cut by Saracen blades. Brother Thomas's deep bass, but Brother Thomas fell with a dozen arrows in his chest. Brothers I'd served with, brothers I'd watched die. I spent that night hunched in the corner of my cell, clutching my cross, mumbling prayers. The dead kept singing until sunrise. Each night they drew nearer. I started seeing movement in the darkness, shadowy figures processing across the sand. They carried no lights, their feet left no tracks. But I heard their voices, stronger every night. I recognized more brothers among the singers, men who died because of my choices at Hatton. I'd commanded our unit's retreat, leaving them to face Saladin's cavalry alone. Their deaths bought my escape. Weeks into my vigil, they reached the base of my tower. Dozens of dark shapes circled the walls, singing the mass for the dead. In the starlight, I glimpsed familiar faces tilted up toward my window. Faces I last saw bloody and lifeless on the battlefield. Brother Michael led the choir, his throat still bearing the red gash that killed him. Brother Thomas's chest bristled with arrow shafts. Others showed sword wounds, crushed skulls, missing limbs. All sang with voices I thought silenced. Forever, I hadn't slept in days. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my prayer book, but I forced myself to watch them. This was my penance, my punishment for surviving when they died. Night after night, they continued their vigil. The singing grew louder, harmonies more complex. Sometimes they changed their chant to the Dies Irae, the hymn of God's wrath and judgment. I began to sing with them. My voice cracked from disuse, but I remembered every verse. The Latin echoed off stone walls. As I joined their chorus, living and dead voices mingled in ancient prayers. On the 30th night, they began climbing the tower. I heard their armored footsteps on the stairs, slow and deliberate. Chainmail clinked against stone. Sword scabbards scraped the walls. Still they sang, voices growing louder as they ascended. I barred my door with a wooden beam, pressed myself into the corner furthest from the entrance. Sweat soaked my tunic despite the cool night air. The footsteps reached my level, stopped outside my door. The singing swelled to fill the tiny cell. A gauntleted hand knocked 3 times. Brother Robert, Brother Michael's voice, exactly as I remembered it. Open the door, face your brothers. My legs shook as I stood. The wooden beam felt impossibly heavy as I lifted it away. The door swung open. They filled the doorway and spilled into my cell. A dozen dead Templars in blood-stained surcoats. Their flesh was pale as moonlight, but their eyes burned with inner fire. Brother Michael stood at their head, smiling gently despite his severed throat. "We've come to complete your penance, brother," he said, "to free you from the weight of your guilt." I had no choice, I whispered. The unit would have been destroyed. I had to order the retreat. There is always a choice. Brother Thomas stepped forward, arrows jutting from his chest. "You chose to save yourself and condemn us. Now you must choose again." They formed a circle around me, still singing softly. Brother Michael drew his sword. The blade gleamed with an unnatural light. "Join us in death," he said, "or live with your shame for another 47 days. The choice is yours." The sword felt right in my hands, familiar weight, sharp edge catching starlight. One quick thrust would end my penance, unite me with my brothers. But I am a Templar. We are sworn to endure, to suffer, to atone. I drove the sword into the floor and fell to my knees. I choose to live with my shame, to honor your sacrifice through my suffering. The singing stopped. Brother Michael nodded slowly. "Then your real penance begins. We will visit every night until your vigil ends. You will hear our songs, see our wounds, remember our deaths. And perhaps," Brother Thomas added, "you will learn the true meaning of sacrifice." They faded like mist in morning sun. Only their voices lingered, growing fainter as they descended the tower. The mass for the dead drifted away across the desert. I remained kneeling. Until dawn, my joints ached, my eyes burned. But my mind was clearer than it had been in years. They still come every night. I've stopped counting the days. The singing no longer frightens me. I welcome it. Join my voice to theirs. Let the desert wind carry our prayers to heaven. My brothers taught me that true penance isn't punishment. It's remembrance, honor, acceptance of past sins and their cost. 47 days remain, or perhaps I'll stay here forever, adding my voice to the choir until I become just another ghost in the tower of silence, another guardian of memory, another keeper of the dead. Let the sands shift, let the stars wheel overhead, let the living forget. We will remember, we will sing, we will endure. The end. The siege has lasted 17 days. I can hear Saladin's armies outside our walls. Their siege engines creak in the darkness. The air smells of smoke and rotting corpses. But here in the Templar Bank's vault, I have bigger problems. The coins are changing. I noticed it 3 days ago during my nightly inventory. Every Templar sergeant responsible for a banking house must count the contents twice daily. We're the most trusted bankers in the Holy Land. Even Muslim merchants deposit their gold. With us, I was counting a stack of Byzantine bezants when I saw the first mark. A tiny symbol etched into the gold, like a writhing serpent. I'd never seen anything like it in 15 years of handling coins. The next morning, that coin was clean. No mark, but 3 others in the vault now bore similar symbols. I am not a superstitious man. The order trained me to be practical, mathematical. We invented the banking letter of credit. We manage the wealth of kings. I deal in facts and numbers, not omens and portents. But now I sit at my counting table, watching the symbols spread from coin to coin like a disease. The vault lies deep beneath the Templar compound in Acre. Thick stone walls, heavy iron door. My single lamp casts sharp shadows across shelves stacked with strong boxes and money chests. The siege sounds are muffled down here. Just the occasional rumble of impact when the Muslim armies test our defenses. I pull out my ledger and begin the evening count. Row after row of precise numbers, deposits, withdrawals, loans, interest payments. Everything must balance perfectly. The first chest contains silver deniers from France. I count methodically, stack the coins in neat rows of 10. Halfway through, my hands freeze. A new symbol gleams on the silver, not the serpentine mark from before. This looks like an eye. It seems to stare back at me. My hands shake as I continue counting. More marked coins appear. Eyes, serpents, twisted crosses, things I can't describe. The symbols make my vision blur if I look at them too long. I close the chest and move to the next. Byzantine gold, Venetian ducats, Muslim dinars. The marks are spreading through all of them. I've seen these symbols before, in dreams. For the past week, I've dreamed of an ancient vault deep beneath Jerusalem, older than the Templars, older than Christianity. In my dreams, I walk down endless stone corridors lined with identical iron doors. Behind each door, I hear counting, thousands of voices murmuring, numbers in dead languages. At the end of the corridor stands a final door marked with the same symbols I now see on the coins. I always wake before I can open it. A crash from above shakes dust from the ceiling. The siege engines are getting closer, but I barely notice. I'm too focused on the ledger in front of me. The numbers have started changing. Line items shift when I'm not looking. Deposits grow larger. Withdrawals vanish. Interest calculations spiral into impossible figures. I check the date at the top of the page, October 12th, 1187. But as I watch, the ink seems to flow like water. The date becomes October 12th, 1307, then 1312, then 1314. My head pounds. Those dates mean something important that I should remember. Another crash from above, closer this time. The lamp flickers. In the wavering light, I see more symbols appearing on the ledger pages. They squirm across the parchment like living things. I know what they're trying to tell me. The Templar banking network isn't just about money. We move other things through our vaults, secret things, knowledge forbidden by the church, power that the order has accumulated over centuries. The symbols are a language, the oldest language. It speaks of wealth beyond gold, power beyond mortal kings. Every Templar banker learns the surface secrets, how to encrypt messages in financial records, how to move men and materials unnoticed through our network of commanderies, how to hide the Order's true wealth from prying eyes, but deeper secrets wait in the vaults beneath our feet. In Jerusalem, Paris, London, a web of underground chambers connected by hidden passages. At the center of that web lies the source of our power. The symbols are showing me the truth. The banking network is a cover, a means to an end. For centuries, we've been gathering something far more valuable than gold. Another explosion rocks the vault, closer still. The Muslim armies are breaching the outer walls. I should be afraid, but the symbols have shown me what's coming. The siege of Acre is only the beginning. I see dates flowing through my mind like water. 1307, the arrests begin in France. 1312. The order is dissolved. 1314. The Grand Master burns, but the secret vaults will survive. The hidden knowledge will endure. The symbols will wait in darkness until they're needed again. My hands move on their own, opening strong boxes and chests. I begin sorting coins, marked ones in one pile, clean ones in another. The marked coins form patterns on my counting table, circles within circles, lines of power flowing between them like rivers of light. I understand now. This vault isn't just a storehouse for wealth. It's a key, a nexus point in the great work that the Order began 2 centuries ago. The pounding of siege engines grows louder. The vault door shudders in its frame. I have a choice to make. I can destroy the marked coins, burn the ledgers, try to stop whatever power is flowing through our banking network, or I can complete the pattern. Speak the words that the symbols are teaching me. Open a door that should stay closed. Muslim soldiers will breach our walls within hours. They'll claim the wealth in this vault, but they'll never understand its true purpose. My hands keep moving, arranging coins in intricate patterns. The symbols whisper ancient secrets. Something is waking in the deep vaults. Something that has slept since the Order's founding. The vault door bursts open. Smoke and screams pour in from above. Armed men thunder down the stairs. Too late. The pattern is complete. The words have been spoken. As Acre falls, as our banking house crumbles, as the mighty Templars are driven from the Holy Land, I smile. They can take our gold, but the real treasure of the Order is already moving through secret channels, flowing like water through our hidden network, waiting for the day it will be needed again. The soldiers find me still at my counting table, surrounded by carefully arranged coins. They'll kill me, of course, but I die knowing that I've played my part in something vast and terrible and necessary. The symbols were right. This is only the beginning, the end. The relic burns against my chest. I can feel it through the lead-lined reliquary and my wool tunic. The fragment of the true cross shouldn't give off heat, but it does. The heat started 3 hours ago, just as the sun set and I reached this abandoned monastery. I didn't want this assignment. Transporting holy relics is a job for senior brothers, not a newly ordained Templar. But our numbers are thin. The Order spreads itself across to many lands, to many duties. When Brother Morris fell ill, I was the only one available to move the relic from Jerusalem to our commandery in Tripoli. The monastery sits high in the Lebanese mountains. Stone walls rise 3 stories against bare rock. No lights burn in any window. No smoke rises from any chimney. The brothers left 2 years ago, driven out by raiders. Now it's just me, the relic, and the winter wind howling through empty corridors. I check the reliquary again. The silver case grows warmer by the minute. Sweat runs down my back, despite the cold. My fingers tremble as I unlatch the lid. The fragment lies on red silk. 2 inches of ancient wood, dark with age. The heat radiates from it like a forge. That's impossible. I've handled holy relics before. They're just objects. Sacred, yes, but physical things. They don't generate heat. A sound echoes through the monastery. Footsteps on stone. But I'm alone here. I sealed the gates myself. The footsteps grow closer. They come from the chapel. Slow, deliberate steps. The sound of sandals on flagstones. I close the reliquary. Draw my sword. The steel blade catches moonlight from the window. My palm sweats against the grip. The footsteps stop outside my door. A shadow moves in the gap beneath. Who's there? My voice cracks. In the name of the temple, identify yourself. You know who I am, Brother Antoine. The voice sounds old, tired, familiar in a way that makes my skin crawl. You were there when I died. The door swings open. A monk stands in the darkness. His grey robe hangs in tatters. His face, I know that face. Brother Bernard. But Brother Bernard died 6 months ago in Jerusalem. I watched him die. I caused his death. No, I stumbled backward. You're not real enough. He steps into the room. His feet leave bloody prints on the stone floor. The relic brought me here. It brings all of us here. More footsteps in the corridor. More shadows in the doorway. More faces I recognize. Brothers who died under my watch because of my failures. My sins. Brother Michel, chest crushed by a falling horse. My fault. I spooked the animal during training. Brother Jean, throat cut by bandits. I was supposed to guard him during his prayer vigil. I fell asleep at my post. Brother Felipe, dead of fever in Gaza. I didn't check the water supply for contamination. My responsibility. They fill the room. A dozen dead Templars. Their wounds still fresh. Blood drips on ancient stones. The reliquary burns against my chest. I rip it free from my neck. Throw it on the bed. The silver case glows red hot. The true cross reveals truth. Brother Bernard says, shows us our sins. Forces us to face what we've done. I didn't mean for any of you to die. The words taste like ash in my mouth. They were accidents, mistakes. Every sin carries a price. Brother Michel steps forward. The crushed ruin of his chest gleams wetly in the moonlight. Every death demands payment. They move closer. A circle of accusing eyes. Bloody hands reach for me. I grab the reliquary. The metal sears my palm. Pain shoots up my arm. The lid springs open. Golden light pours out. The fragment of the true cross floats in the air, burning like a star. Images flash through my mind. Every death, every failure, every moment of weakness or cowardice that led to a brother's fall. Brother Michel's horse rearing in terror as I wave my torch to close. Brother Jean's eyes widening in surprise as the bandit's knife finds his throat. Brother Felipe shivering with fever, begging for clean water that I was too lazy to fetch. The memories burn like fire, like the touch of the reliquary in my blistered hand. Please, I fall to my knees. I can't bear it. You must bear it. Brother Bernard's voice holds no mercy. As we bore our deaths, as he bore his cross, the relic burns brighter. More memories surface. Deeper sins, darker failures. The letter I didn't deliver that could have saved 3 brothers from ambush. The warning I didn't sound that led to a Muslim raid on our hospital. The confession I didn't make about stealing from the Order's treasury. Each sin adds weight. Each memory burns hotter. The dead press closer, their touch like ice against my fevered skin. What do you want from me? I can barely speak through the pain. Confession. Brother Bernard kneels beside me. His blood soaks into my tunic. Truth. Acceptance of what you've done. And then you choose. Carry the burden of memory, or join us in death. The relic demands. Just as either way, the fragment of the true cross hangs before me. Its light shows everything, every sin, every failure, every death I caused through action or inaction. I could end it now. Fall on my sword. Join my brothers in whatever darkness holds them. But that would be another failure, another sin to carry. I reach for the relic. My fingers close around the ancient wood. Pain explodes through my body. Holy fire burns away pretense and pride. I scream out my confession to the empty monastery, every sin, every name, every death that stains my soul. The dead listen in silence. Their eyes hold neither forgiveness nor condemnation, only truth. When the last sign leaves my lips, the relic's light dims. The heat fades from my blistered hand. Brother Bernard nods slowly. You've chosen then to live with the weight of memory. Yes, my voice sounds raw, empty. I'll carry it. Good. He stands. The others move back toward the door. The relic has served its purpose. Guard it. Well, take it to those who need its truth. Will I see you again? Every night in dreams. Every day in memory. Until your own death comes to balance the scales. They fade like mist. The room grows cold. I'm alone with the relic, my burnt hand, and the weight of confession. Dawn comes too slowly. I pack the reliquary away, wincing at its touch. The fragment lies quiet now, waiting. I have 3 days' ride to Tripoli. 3 days to decide if I'll tell the Order what their holy relic really does, what truths it forces into light. But I know I'll stay silent. Some burdens must be carried alone. The relic has shown me my sins. Now I must live with them. The end. The courier died delivering this manuscript. They found him at dawn outside our commandery gates. His throat was torn open. The manuscript lay clutched against his chest, its leather binding stained with his blood. I'm the youngest knight in our garrison. Last one ordained, first one picked for unwanted duties. When the Master of Montfort ordered me to transport the manuscript to our fortress, I couldn't refuse. 3 days of hard riding through Crusader territory. The manuscript stays wrapped in oiled leather, strapped to my saddle. I'm not supposed to open it, just deliver it, the master said. Don't look inside. Don't stop until you reach Montfort. But I've seen the illuminations. They move when no one's watching. I noticed it the first night. I was checking the manuscript's wrappings before sleep. A page had worked loose. Golden paint caught the firelight. An image of knights in battle. The figures were fighting Saracens. Standard Crusader imagery. But something was wrong. The longer I stared, the more details changed. A knight's sword shifted position between one blink and the next. A horse's legs moved slightly. A fallen warrior's hand twitched. I slammed the manuscript shut, wrapped it tight, tried to sleep. The dreams started that night. I stood in a great hall I'd never seen. Templar banners hung from stone walls. Hundreds of knights knelt in rows, heads bowed. At the front, 9 masters stood in a circle. They held a book bound in black leather. The masters began to chant, words I couldn't understand. The book started to glow. Then the screaming began. I woke in a cold sweat. The manuscript lay next to my bedroll, wrapped in leather. In the pre-dawn darkness, I could have sworn it was pulsing. like a heart beating. 2 more days of riding, 2 more nights of dreams. Each time the same hall, the same chanting, but I saw more. Knights writhing on the floor as the masters read from their black book. Blood running in channels cut into the stone floor. Symbols burning in the air. Last night, I finally saw the end of the dream. The masters finished their chant. The black book burst into white flame. And every knight in the hall rose as one, eyes glowing with unholy light. I wake now to the walls of Montfort looming ahead. The greatest Templar fortress in the Holy Land. Built into a mountainside, towers rising from bare rock. My destination. The manuscript feels heavy in its wrappings, like it's gained weight since yesterday. Guards challenge me. At the gate, I show my credentials. They escort me through outer walls, across courtyards, up winding stairs. The fortress is huge. Hundreds of knights train in practice yards. Servants scurry through corridors. The sound of prayers echoes from the chapel. But something feels wrong. The guards' faces are too blank. The knights move too smoothly in their drills. The prayers sound hollow, mechanical. They take me to the master's study high in the central tower. Afternoon sun streams through narrow windows. The master sits behind a massive oak desk. I've never met him before. His face looks young, but his eyes are ancient. He stares at the manuscript in my hands. You opened it, not a question. No, master. The lie tastes like copper in my mouth. I followed orders. Then why are you sweating, Brother James? Why do your hands shake? I swallow hard. Bad dreams, master. Nothing more. Dreams of a great hall. Of 9 masters and their black book. My blood turns to ice. How did you? The manuscript shows what it chooses. He rises, moves around the desk. It has a way of preparing those who carry it. Preparing for what? He smiles. The expression never reaches his eyes. For what comes next? For the great work begun centuries ago in that hall you dreamed of. I don't understand. You will. He takes the manuscript from my trembling hands. Unwraps it carefully. The illuminations are more than artwork. They're a record, a prophecy, a guide to what must be done. He opens the manuscript. Golden light spills across his desk. The illuminations are moving freely now. Knights ride across pages. Battles rage in miniature. Blood flows in tiny rivers of red paint. Look closely, the master commands. See what the manuscript wants to show you. I lean forward. The images swirl and change. I see Montfort as it truly is. Not just a fortress, a prison, a temple, a place of transformation. Knights patrol corridors with glowing eyes. Prayers echo in empty voices. Secret chambers beneath the mountain hold things that were once men. The 9 masters thought they could control it. The master's voice seems to come from far away. The power they found in those ancient scrolls. But it controlled them instead. Changed them. Changed all of us. The manuscript's pages turn by themselves. Show me what's coming. Armies gathering in darkness. Fortresses falling. Kings and popes issuing proclamations of doom. And beneath it all, something growing. Spreading through. The Order's network of commanderies like a cancer. Waiting for the right moment to emerge. The manuscript doesn't just record the past. The master closes the book gently. It shapes the future. Guides us toward our destiny. My legs feel weak. What destiny? You'll understand soon enough. He rings a small bell. Guards enter. Knights with empty eyes and 2 smooth movements. Take Brother James to the preparation chamber. They grab my arms. Their hands are cold as ice. Wait, I try to pull away. I just came to deliver the manuscript. I don't want what you want, doesn't matter. The master smiles again. The manuscript chose you, as it chose all of us, as it has chosen every knight brought to Montfort these past 200 years. The guards drag me toward the door. Don't fight it, Brother James. The master opens the manuscript again. Golden light bathes his face. The transformation hurts less if you accept it. Through the doorway, I see stone stairs descending into darkness. The sound of chanting rises from below, the same chant from my dreams. The guards pull me down into the dark, into the true heart of Montfort, into the destiny the manuscript has prepared me for. I see now why the courier died delivering it. He saw what was inside, saw what's coming, chose death over being part of it. I wish I had that choice. The chanting grows louder. Light flares in the darkness below. The manuscript's prophecy unfolds exactly as written. And I descend into illumination, the end. The girl wasn't worth breaking my vows for. I know that now, alone in the darkness beneath the commandery. 7 days of penance in the catacombs. No light except my single candle. No food except bread and water. No company except the dead. And the writing on the walls. The writing that appears in my own hand. I found the first message yesterday, scratched into the limestone next to a pile of ancient bones. My handwriting, my style of letters, but I hadn't written it. A deeper truth lies below just that. 5 words. I recognized every curve and stroke of the letters. Even the way I cross my T's with a slight upward angle. I've been a Templar for 12 years, kept my vows until last month. Then Maria came to the commandery seeking shelter, young, beautiful, alone, her husband killed in a bandit raid. I was supposed to protect her. Instead, I broke my oath of chastity. The master found out. Now I serve my penance in the dark. The catacombs stretch for miles under our rural commandery in France. Tunnels branch and twist like a warren. Ancient burial chambers hold bones from Roman times. Deeper passages lead to places no one has visited in centuries. I stick to the upper levels, mark my path with chalk so I don't get lost. Spend hours in prayer, trying to cleanse my soul. But the messages keep appearing. This morning, count the niches in the eastern wall. My handwriting again. Fresh marks in the limestone. I counted 13 burial niches carved into the rock. Empty except for dust and cobwebs. Then I noticed the 14th niche, hidden behind a fallen stone. Inside lay a book bound in black leather. The pages were blank when I opened it. But as I watched, words began to form. My handwriting flowing across the paper like water. The order keeps secrets beneath its holy facade. Go deeper, find the truth. I slammed the book shut, shoved it back in the niche, retreated to my assigned chamber to pray. But the messages followed me. They appeared on every wall, my handwriting multiplying like insects. The 13 founders knew the truth. The real temple lies beneath. Follow the markers. See what they built. I tried to ignore them, focused on my prayers, on proper penance for breaking my vows. Then I found the door, hidden behind a stack of bones, ancient wood bound with iron, symbols carved into the frame, shapes that hurt my eyes to look at. And next to it, in my handwriting, this is where it began, where 13 became 12, where the true work started. I shouldn't have opened it, should have stayed in the upper catacombs, completed my penance properly. But the words kept appearing, my own hand taunting me, driving me deeper. Beyond the door, stone stairs descended into darkness. The air grew colder with each step. My single candle barely pushed back the black. More messages lined the walls. A trail of my own handwriting leading down. They thought they served Christ. They found something older, something hungry. The stairs ended in a circular chamber. 13 stone chairs arranged in a ring. A pit in the center, descending into nothingness. Bones littered the floor. Not ancient Roman dead. These were fresher, and they wore fragments of Templar robes. My handwriting covered the walls here, hundreds of messages overlapping. The story of 13 founders who discovered something in Jerusalem, something they brought back to France, something they thought they could control. I read how 12 of them changed, how they began the true work of the order, how the 13th tried to stop them and paid the price. The messages led to a second door, bigger, heavier, marked with symbols that made my head hurt. Open it, my handwriting urged. See the truth, join the work. I stood there, trembling. The candle guttered in a draft from below. New words appeared on the door as I watched. Your sin brought you here. Your guilt led you down. But the real penance is knowledge. My hands moved on there. Own pushed against ancient wood. The door swung open on silent hinges. Beyond lay a vast chamber. My candle couldn't reach the walls or ceiling, but it showed me enough. Rows of stone tables, things strapped to them under moldering sheets, tunnels branching off into darkness, sounds echoing up from below, chanting in languages I didn't know, and everywhere, my handwriting, not messages now, formulas, diagrams, instructions for transformations that made my mind recoil. I stumbled backward, slammed the door, ran up the stairs, but the messages followed, spreading across every surface, my hand spelling out horrors I couldn't comprehend. I fled through the catacombs, lost my chalk marks, took wrong turns. Now I'm lost in the dark. My candle burns low, and the writing continues. My hand in the darkness, revealing the order's true purpose, the real meaning of our vows and rituals, the thing growing beneath all our commanderies, spreading like roots through the earth. The messages say, this is proper penance, not for breaking my oath of chastity. That sin was nothing, meaningless. This is penance for ignorance, for believing the order was what it claimed to be. My candle is almost gone. Soon I'll be in total darkness. But I can still write, still spread the truth across these ancient walls. I understand now. I didn't find these messages. They found me, led me down, showed me what I was meant to see. The girl wasn't worth breaking my vows for, but breaking them brought me here, to knowledge, to purpose, to the true work. My candle dies. In the dark, I feel the stone walls, find smooth spaces, begin to write. Others will come, other sinners seeking penance. They'll find my messages, follow them down. The order grows stronger with each new understanding, each new acceptance of our real purpose. I write in darkness now, but I finally see the truth. This is what penance means. This is what the order truly is. And in the deep places beneath our feet, the 13 chairs await new occupants. 12 to continue the work. 1 to feed the pit, the end. The merchant brought the mirror as payment for his debt. 200 bezants owed to the Templar treasury in Jerusalem. He couldn't pay in gold, he said. But the mirror was Byzantine work, ancient, worth far more than his debt. I'm the Order's treasurer here. I know value when I see it. The mirror's frame is solid silver, blackened with age. Its surface doesn't reflect like normal glass or polished metal. It seems deeper somehow, like looking into still water. I accepted it as payment. Rode off. The merchant's debt. Standard procedure. That was 3 days ago, before the mirror started showing me things that couldn't exist. I keep it in my office in the treasury vault. Thick stone walls, heavy wooden door, no windows, just oil lamps for light. The perfect place to count the orders, gold, and manage our banking operations. This morning, I saw something impossible in the mirror's surface. I was reviewing ledgers at my desk. The mirror hung on the wall opposite me. Movement caught my eye. The reflection showed my office, but wrong. Different arrangements of furniture, scrolls and books I'd never seen before, and a door in the back wall where there shouldn't be one. I turned around. My office looked normal, no extra door. When I looked back at the mirror, it showed the regular reflection again. I tried to work, kept glancing at the mirror. An hour later, it changed again. This time, it showed a chamber I'd never seen. Vast space carved from rock. Rows of stone tables with things laid out on them, hooded figures moving between the tables. Their robes bore the Templar cross. I crossed the office, touched the mirror's surface. Cold glass, nothing more. But the scene remained. I watched the figures perform some kind of ritual. Their chanting reached me faintly, like sounds heard underwater. When I blinked, my normal reflection returned. I should report this. Tell the master about the strange mirror. But something holds me back. The scenes it shows feel important, like secrets I'm meant to find. The third vision came at sunset. The mirror clouded over. When it cleared, I saw tunnels stretching beneath the temple mount. Hundreds of Templars working in the darkness, digging, searching, finding things that made me shut my eyes. But the mirror kept showing me more. Hidden chambers beneath every Templar commandery in the Holy Land. Secret passages connecting them. A vast network of underground spaces where the real work of the Order takes place. I've been treasurer here for 8 years. I thought I knew all our secrets. The hidden accounts, the coded messages in our banking records, the true extent of our wealth and power. The mirror shows me how little I really knew. Now I'm sitting at my desk, watching the surface cloud again. New visions forming. A chamber deep beneath my feet. 13 chairs arranged in a circle. 12 occupied by figures in Templar robes. The 13th empty, waiting. The mirror's surface ripples. Shows me corridors I've walked past 100 times. Reveals hidden doors, secret passages. The way down to that waiting chamber. My hands shake as I write this in my ledger. The visions feel real, solid, more truth than madness. I could find those passages now. Follow the mirror's guidance. See if the chambers really exist. But someone's coming. Boots on stone steps. Keys in the lock. The master enters my office. His eyes go straight to the mirror. So it called to you, too. He sounds tired, resigned. We wondered who it would choose next. You know about the mirror? We placed it with the merchant. Let him offer it as payment. Standard procedure for identifying potential initiates. My mouth goes dry. Initiates into what? He crosses to the mirror. Touches its surface. The true order. The one that exists beneath the one the world sees. The mirror clouds at his touch. Shows the chamber with 13 chairs again. 12 founders, the Master says. 12 who learnt the truth in Jerusalem, who found things in the tunnels beneath the temple, things that changed them, changed their understanding of what the order could be. And the 13th chair, for the one who tried to stop them, who had to be removed. Now it waits for each new generation of initiates. Some join the 12, others, he shrugs. The chair must be filled either way. My legs feel weak. Why show me this? The mirror chooses, reveals the truth to those it deems worthy or dangerous. He turns to face me, which are you, Brother Robert. The mirror's surface ripples again, shows me 2 possible futures. In one, I sit among the 12, learn their secrets, participate in their rituals, help guide the Order's true purpose. In the other, I occupy the 13th chair, briefly. Time to choose, the Master says. The passages beneath us lead to the chamber. The 12 gather tonight. My hands close on the ledger. I could throw it, distract him, run, but the mirror shows me there's nowhere to run. The Order's network spreads everywhere. Its roots go deeper than I imagined. I'll show you the way down, the Master says. The mirror has already shown you everything else. He's right, I've seen too much. Understanding fills me like cold water. I stand, follow him to the hidden door, the one the mirror showed me. Stone steps descend into darkness. Torchlight flickers below. Chanting rises from the depths. I take the first step down. The mirror shows me what awaits at the bottom. Soon I'll sit in one of those ancient chairs, the 12th or the 13th. The choice I make in the next hour will determine which. Behind us, the mirror watches. Its surface ripples with new visions. New initiates it will call. New choices they will face. The Order's true face lies below, and I descend to meet it. The end. The first pilgrim vanished on a moonless night. Brother Marcus saw her last, walking toward the campfire's edge to relieve herself. She never returned. We searched until dawn, found nothing but footprints in the sand that stopped abruptly, as if she'd been lifted into the air. I've escorted pilgrims through the Judean desert for 10 years, never lost one before. The Master assigned me to protect this group. 12 pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. Simple duty, keep them alive, keep them moving, keep them safe. The second pilgrim disappeared the next night. An old man, this time, went to sleep by the fire. Was gone when I checked the camp at midnight. His blanket lay empty, still warm. They all came back at dawn, both of them, the woman and the old man, standing at the camp's edge like they'd never left. No memory of where they'd been, no injuries, just blank eyes and quiet voices. Something changed in them. I've seen enough troubled souls to know. They moved differently, spoke differently, like poorly made copies of themselves. The other pilgrims noticed too. They watched their returned companions with wary eyes, clustered closer to the fire at night, prayed more frequently. I sent a message to the nearest Templar fortress, asked for guidance. The response came back quickly. Continue to Jerusalem. Tell no one what you've seen. This has happened before. That's when I remembered the stories, whispered tales in the Order's halls. Other pilgrim groups with similar incidents, people vanishing in the night, returning changed. The official records say nothing, but Templars talk, share warnings, pass down knowledge that never reaches parchment. 3 more pilgrims disappeared that night, a mother and her 2 sons. I doubled the watch, posted guards with torches, didn't matter. They came back at dawn, like the others, empty eyes, hollow voices, moving like puppets with invisible strings. The remaining pilgrims panicked, wanted to turn back. I couldn't let them. Orders were clear. Continue to Jerusalem no matter what. I watched the changed ones at breakfast. They ate mechanically, spoke only when spoken to. Their words seemed rehearsed, like lines from a play. The woman who vanished first sat across from me. The truth lies beneath, she said suddenly. In the deep places where they gathered, where they changed. Who changed? I asked, what happened to you out there? She smiled, empty eyes fixed on nothing. You'll see when the work is complete, when all are gathered. The other changed ones nodded in unison. The old man spoke next. The order keeps its greatest secrets underground, in chambers of transformation, in halls of ascension. My mouth went dry. They shouldn't know about those places. No one outside the order's highest ranks should know they exist. I've never seen the deep chambers myself, but I've heard rumors, hidden spaces beneath our fortresses, places where the order's true work takes place. That night, more pilgrims vanished. I tried to follow them, tracked footprints in the sand by torchlight. They led to a rock outcropping, then stopped. But I heard something, chanting from below the earth. Words in no language I knew. They returned at dawn, of course. Now 9 of the 12 pilgrims moved with that strange, hollow grace. Spoke with empty voices about deep places and transformation. The remaining 3 huddled together, clutching crosses and prayer beads. I couldn't protect them, couldn't stop what was happening. That night, I stayed awake, watched the changed ones rise at midnight, move in perfect unison toward the rocks. The last 3 pilgrims rose too, like sleepwalkers, and followed. I went after them, found a crack in the stone, a passage leading down. The chanting grew louder as I descended. Torchlight flickered on rough walls. The tunnel sloped deeper, deeper. I should have turned back, should have run, but I had to know. The passage opened into a vast chamber. Rows of stone tables lined the walls. Things lay on those tables, things that had once been human. Hooded figures moved between the tables. Their robes bore the Templar cross. My brothers, my order, but not as I knew them. The pilgrims knelt in a circle. The chanters surrounded them. Began the transformation. I fled, ran back up the tunnel, emerged into clean night air. They all returned at dawn. All 12 pilgrims, all changed. We reached Jerusalem 3 days later. I delivered them to a monastery. Near the Temple Mount, the brothers there knew what to do with them. They'd handled changed ones before. The master summoned me that evening, high in the fortress tower. You've seen, he said. Not a question. The chamber, the tables, the transformations. My voice shook. What are we doing to them? Preparing them for what comes next. For the order's true purpose. This isn't what I swore to defend. You swore to obey, to keep silence. He stepped closer. The deep chambers exist beneath. Every fortress, the work continues in all of them. The changed ones multiply. Why? Because what we found beneath the temple must be fed, must be strengthened, must spread. He smiled, like a seed sprouting roots through fertile soil. I backed toward the door. I'll tell others. Expose this. No. He shook his head. You won't. Your vows bind you to silence. And even if you break them, who would believe you? He was right. The order's power is absolute. Its secrets stay buried. I still escort pilgrims through the desert, still watch them vanish, still deliver them to Jerusalem, changed and hollow. The chanting spreads beneath the earth. The chambers fill with transformed flesh. The order's true work continues. And I maintain my vow of silence. Not out of loyalty now, out of fear. Fear of what grows in the deep places. Fear of what we're becoming. Fear of the day when enough have been changed. When whatever we found beneath the temple is finally ready to emerge. I lead another group into the desert tomorrow. 12 pilgrims seeking Jerusalem. By the time we arrive, they won't be pilgrims anymore. They won't be human anymore. And I'll maintain my silence. Guard my order's secrets. The alternative is the 13th chair. The one they save for brothers who talk too much. The one that's always hungry for a new occupant. The end. The door had been sealed for 300 years. I found the records in our archive. Orders from the first Grand Master himself. Let no one enter the library beneath the fortress until the appointed time. When the right scribe comes, he will know himself in the texts. I didn't expect that scribe to be me. The fortress in Lebanon sits on a mountain ridge, abandoned for decades. The master sent me to catalogue whatever survived inside. Standard procedure when reclaiming old Templar holdings. I found the library door on my 3rd day, hidden behind a collapsed wall in the lowest level. Heavy oak bound with iron. Templar seals intact across the frame. The lock opened at my touch, just clicked and swung open. 3 centuries of mechanisms shouldn't work that smoothly. The air that rushed out felt wrong, not stale like it should be after 300 years. It smelled like smoke and something metallic, like hot iron. My lantern showed rows of shelves stretching into darkness. Hundreds of books and scrolls. The paper should have rotted. The ink should have faded. But everything looked fresh, like it had been written yesterday. I started cataloging on the first shelf. Basic scribal procedure. Note the title, author, condition, contents. The 3rd book stopped me cold. It described my childhood. Every detail exactly right. But it was written in 1187, 3 centuries before I was born. My hands shook as I read. The boy who will become our chronicler lives in a small village, near Tours. He learns letters from the parish priest. His mother dies of fever when he is 8. He joins the order at 16. I slammed the book shut, grabbed another at random. This one described my scribal training, my first assignment copying manuscripts. The time I spilled ink on a valuable psalter and had to rewrite the whole page. Another book, another piece of my life. My first posting to Jerusalem, my transfer to the archives. Every moment recorded centuries before I lived it. I should have left then, should have sealed the door again, but I kept reading. The next book wasn't about my past. It showed my future. The scribe finds his name in our texts, reads what will come, sees his part in the great work. The change spreads through his flesh as knowledge fills his mind. He becomes what he must become. My skin itched as I read those words, felt too tight, like something was shifting underneath. I moved deeper into the library, found more books, more prophecies. They told the Order's true history, not the version we learned as initiates. Something older, darker. The first Templars didn't find relics beneath the Temple Mount. They found something alive, something that had waited centuries for them. It changed them, showed them visions, gave them purpose. The books told everything. The network of chambers beneath every fortress, the transformations, the preparations for what was coming. My hands looked different in the lantern light. The skin rippled like water. Another shelf. Another prophecy. 13 chairs in the deep places. 12 filled by choice. 1 filled by necessity. The scribe must choose his seat. I knew those chairs. Saw them in dreams I hadn't dreamed yet. The words on the pages began to move. Rearrange themselves. Show new truths. The order wasn't founded to protect pilgrims. That was just cover for the real work. The gathering, the changing, the slow spread of whatever lived beneath the temple. My bones shifted beneath my skin. The changes accelerated as I read more. A book bound in black leather caught my eye. Inside, fresh ink flowed across the pages. The scribe reads these words now, feels the truth enter his flesh, understands what the order truly serves, what all our work prepares for, what rises beneath our feet, growing stronger with each passing year. The library seemed bigger now. The shelves stretched endlessly in every direction. More books than could fit in the space behind that door. Or maybe the space itself was changing, growing, shifting like my flesh. I found a mirror on one shelf. Looked at my reflection. My face rippled like disturbed water. Features flowed and reformed. But my eyes saw clearer than ever. Another book, another truth. The scribes are our memory, our record keepers, our prophets. Through them, the change spreads to our texts, to our archives, to our very history. Reality reshapes itself around their words. I understood then. The library hadn't been sealed. Keep people out. It had been sealed to keep something in. Until the right scribe came. Until me. The books told me what would happen next. Showed me taking my place among the 12. Or the 1. Showed the choice I would make in the chamber far below. My flesh continued to shift. My mind expanded. Knowledge poured in, past, present, future, all flowing together. I saw other libraries beneath other fortresses. Other scribes reading their own prophecies. The change spreading through all our archives, through all our histories. The order's true face emerged from those pages. Not defenders of pilgrims, not holy warriors. Something older, patient, growing. I write this now in a blank book I found. My hand moves on its own. Records what is happening, what will happen. Others will find these words. Other scribes, other initiates. The prophecies will continue. The change spreads through my fingers into the ink. Through the ink into the pages. Through the pages into reality itself. Soon I will go down to the chamber below. Take my place in one of the 13 chairs. But first I must write, must record, must prophesy. The next scribe will read these words, will find his own name in these pages, will feel the change begin. The library grows larger around me. More shelves appear. More books fill with flowing words. I see now why that first door was sealed. Not to protect us from what was inside. To protect everyone else from what we would become. The Order's greatest secret isn't hidden in our vaults or our treasuries or our ceremonies. It's hidden in our books, in our words, in the way we reshape history itself. Reality bends around my pen as I write these final words. The next scribe reads this now, feels the first changes begin, understands what the Order truly is. Welcome, brother. Your prophecy has already been written. Your transformation has already begun. The end. The fever burns through my body. Rain pounds the infirmary roof. Lightning flashes through narrow windows. The other beds lie empty. Brothers moved to different quarters when my sickness worsened. No one wants to be near a dying Templar who screams secrets in his sleep. The confessor arrived an hour ago. Tall figure in a black robe, hood shadowing his face. He sits beside my bed, waiting. His presence feels wrong. The air around him bends like heat waves over desert sand. Tell me your sins. Brother Gabriel. His voice sounds like many voices speaking together. Tell me what you've seen in your years of service. I've been a Templar for 30 years, fought in 3 crusades, guarded our vaults, kept our secrets. Now the fever strips away my vows of silence. I killed a brother in Jerusalem. The words spill out like blood. Brother Michael, he discovered something in the vaults beneath the Temple Mount. Something he shouldn't have seen. I pushed him down the stairs. Said it was an accident. What did he discover? A chamber. Older than the temple. Older than Jerusalem itself. Inside. My voice catches. Sweat soaks the sheets. Inside was a thing that spoke to us. Showed us visions. Told us the Order's true purpose. The confessor leans forward. Tell me what you saw. The fever burns hotter. Reality ripples like disturbed water. I see the chamber again in my mind. Stone walls carved with symbols that hurt the eyes. A pit in the center, descending into darkness. And, suspended above it, a thing of angles and movement that shouldn't exist in our world. It showed us everything. My voice shakes. The chambers beneath every fortress. The transformations. The spreading change. The Order's real work. And what is that work? Preparation for what's growing underneath. For what we're becoming. The confessor's hood shifts. Something moves beneath the black cloth. Something that isn't a human face. Tell me about the 13th chair. My heart pounds faster. How does he know about that? 12 seats in the circle. The words burn my throat. 12 brothers who accepted the change. The 13th chair for the ones who resist, who try to expose our secrets. Like Brother Michael. Yes, shame fills me. He wouldn't accept it. Wouldn't take his place among the 12. So the first gave him to the 13th chair instead. Lightning flashes. In the brief light, I see beneath the confessor's hood. My scream catches in my throat. You've killed others. Not a question. The many voices speak with certainty. 7 brothers. All who discovered too much. Who threatened to expose us. Tears run down my face. I served the Order. Protected its secrets. And now you lie dying. Ready to carry those secrets to your grave. Yes, relief floods me. Soon it will be over. No, the confessor stands. His robe ripples with impossible movements. Your confession isn't finished. Tell me about the deep places. The things you've seen in the lowest vaults. The fever spikes. Images flood my mind. Chambers far beneath our fortresses. Stone tables with writhing forms strapped down. Brothers chanting in languages that hurt the ears. The slow spread of change through flesh and bone. We thought we were serving God. My voice cracks. But what we found beneath the temple, what we woke up, tell me. It promised us power, knowledge, transformation. Said it had waited centuries for us to find it. I cough. Taste blood. We didn't know what it really wanted, what it was turning us into. The confessor moves closer. His robe brushes my bed. The air grows colder. You knew, you all knew, but you continued anyway. Fed it more, brothers, more sacrifices, more flesh for its purposes. We had no choice. Fever makes the room spin. Once the change begins, it can't be stopped. The Order serves its will now. Has served it for centuries. And what is its will? To spread, to grow, to transform all it touches. My voice drops to a whisper. To remake the world in its image. The confessor's hood falls back. What I see underneath stops my heart for 3 beats. Not a face, not a head. Something of angles and surfaces that shift and flow, like the thing above the pit. Like what we're all slowly becoming. Your confession is complete. The many voices speak from that impossible geometry. But your service isn't over. Cold spreads through my body. The fever fades. What are you? I am what you served all along. What speaks? Through every confessor and every infirmary where Templars die, the shape flows and changes. I am what you found beneath the temple, what you helped spread through all our fortresses. Your order became mine centuries ago. Every death, every sacrifice, every transformation strengthened me, helped me grow. The thing that isn't a confessor reaches for me with limbs that aren't arms. Your body dies tonight, but your service continues. Your flesh will feed the change. Your secrets will join all the others I've collected. I try to scream. No sound comes out. The 13th chair awaits, Brother Gabriel. The final seal on your confession. It takes me then, unmakes me, adds my substance to its own. The fever burns away the last of what I was. The thing that wears a confessor's robe moves to the next infirmary, the next dying Templar, the next confession. The Order's greatest secret spreads through stone corridors beneath every fortress, growing stronger with each death, each transformation, each confession. Soon it will be strong enough to emerge. Soon the whole world will confess its sins to what waits in the deep places. Soon we will all sit in the 13th chair, the end. The parchment was blank when I went to sleep. I know this because I checked 3 times before retiring to my cell. But when I returned to my desk in the morning, my own handwriting covered the entire page. The words described rituals I'd never witnessed in a script that was unmistakably mine. That was the first night it happened. I arrived at the Templar fortress of Acre 6 weeks ago. Brother Thomas, the head archivist, assigned me to catalogue the documents in the underground chambers. These records go back to the founding of our order, he told me, handing me the iron key to the lower archives. Many haven't been properly organized since they were brought here from Jerusalem. The work was straightforward at first. Most documents were standard. Financial ledgers, military reports, correspondence between preceptories. I developed a routine. Wake at dawn, break fast with the other brothers, then descend the worn stone steps to the archives. The chambers were cool and dry, perfect for preserving parchment. Rows of wooden shelves lined the walls, stuffed with scrolls and bound volumes. My desk sat in the corner, beneath a narrow window that let in a shaft of dusty light. I noticed the odd documents during my 3rd week. They were mixed in with routine supply lists, fragments of text in unusual Latin dialects. The grammar was archaic, but I could make out references to midnight gatherings and ritual preparations. I showed one to Brother Thomas. He snatched it from my hands. "Focus on the standard records," he said. "Leave anything unusual aside for now." His reaction seemed excessive for what appeared to be old liturgical texts. That night, I heard the chanting for the first time. It was well past midnight. I was almost asleep when the sound reached my cell, deep voices intoning Latin phrases. The words were unclear, but the rhythm was similar to the texts I'd found earlier. I got up to investigate. The stone corridors were empty. The chanting seemed to come from below, near the archives. But when I descended the stairs, The sound shifted, now echoing from the chapel above. I spent an hour searching, finding nothing. When I finally returned to bed, the chanting had stopped. The next morning, I discovered the first mysterious page on my desk. The handwriting was mine, but I had no memory of writing it. The text described a ritual involving candles arranged in specific patterns, timing tied to lunar phases, and chants in that same archaic Latin. I compared it to my other work. Every stroke and flourish matched my normal script. I locked the page in my desk drawer and told no one. That evening, I stayed late in the archives, watching. The only sounds were normal monastery noises. Distant footsteps, the creak of wooden beams, the wind outside. I must have dozed off at my desk. The chanting woke me. Closer now, the words were clearer. In tenebris ambulamus, in lumen servamus. We walk in darkness, we serve in light. The same phrase appeared in the mysterious text I'd found that morning. I moved quietly to the archive door. The chanting grew louder as I approached. Multiple voices just on the other side. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. The door swung open onto an empty corridor. But the chanting continued, now behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The voices seemed to come from all directions and none at all. I ran back to my cell. Sleep was impossible. The chanting continued until dawn, then stopped abruptly as the morning bell rang. Another page waited on my desk that morning. More ritual descriptions in my handwriting, with additional details about participant movements and responses. Again, I had no memory of writing it. This pattern repeated for the next week. Each night, the chanting grew closer. Each morning, new pages appeared. I started keeping the texts together, trying to understand their purpose. They seemed to describe an elaborate ceremony, but the ultimate goal remained unclear. I began noticing changes in the fortress. Brothers I passed in the halls wouldn't meet my eyes. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. During meals, I caught others watching me, then quickly looking away. Brother Thomas grew especially distant. When I tried to discuss archive work with him, he made excuses to leave. Once, I saw him whispering with two senior knights while staring in my direction. They quickly dispersed when they noticed me watching. Last night was different. The chanting started earlier. Just after sunset, I decided to confront it. Taking a candle, I followed the sound to the archives. The voices were clearer than ever, chanting words I now knew by heart from the mysterious texts. The archive door was already open. Candlelight flickered inside. I heard movement between the shelves. I entered slowly. Hooded figures stood in a circle, facing inward. Their chanting filled the chamber. I counted 12 of them. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but their robes were Templar white. One turned toward me. In the candlelight, I saw Brother Thomas's face beneath the hood. He spoke. "You've come. We've been waiting." "What is this?" I demanded. "What's happening here?" "You tell us," another figure said, lowering his hood. "You're the one who wrote the instructions." They parted to reveal my desk. Spread across it were all the mysterious pages I'd found over the past weeks. But there were more, many more, covered in my handwriting. Some looked aged, the parchment yellow and cracking. "These date back 30 years, Brother Thomas said. All in your hand, describing this very moment. We've been following your instructions, preparing for your arrival." "That's impossible," I said. "I've only been here 6 weeks. In this cycle, yes." He lifted one of the older pages. "But your handwriting has guided us through many cycles. Tonight, You'll begin writing the next set. They closed around me. I saw faces I recognized. Fortress guards, knights, fellow scribes, all watching me expectantly. I don't understand, I said. You will, you always do, eventually. Sit, it's time to write. I backed away, but hit the wall. The circle tightened. Brother Thomas held out a quill. The cycle continues, they chanted. The scribe remembers. The scribe records. The scribe guides. My hand rose, seemingly of its own accord, and took the quill. The words were already forming in my mind, in that archaic Latin. I knew exactly what I needed to write, though I didn't know how. I knew. I sat at my desk and began, in tenebris ambulamus, in lumen servimus. The candles flickered. The chanting continued, and I wrote, as I apparently always had, and always would. This morning, I checked the archives again. There was no sign of the gathering. The older pages were gone. Only my fresh writing remained, continuing the instructions for rituals yet to come. Tonight, I'll return to the archives. I'll write more, adding to the cycle. I have no choice. The words are already there, waiting to flow through me onto the page. The chanting has started again, earlier than usual. They're waiting for me below. I can hear them calling. The footprints appeared on the first morning. They started at the tower door and ended at the eastern parapet. Just stopped, 8 feet above the ground with no way down. I checked the dust 3 times to be sure. No prints leading back. I should start at the beginning. 7 nights of solitary vigil in the highest tower of Tyre. Standard duty for veteran Templars. I'd done it dozens of times at other fortresses. Stand watch, pray, maintain alertness. Simple. The tower rose 200 feet. Above the fortress walls, a square room at the top with windows facing each direction. 1 narrow door leading to the spiral staircase. The floor was covered in a thin layer of dust. We hadn't had rain in weeks. I arrived at sunset on the first day. Brother Martin handed me the key. Remember the rules, he said. No sleeping, no visitors, no leaving your post until sunrise. 7 nights, I locked the door behind me. The room was bare, except for a small wooden stool and an oil lamp. I lit the lamp and began my first circuit of the windows. The sun was setting over the Mediterranean to the west. The city of Tyre spread below me to the north and south. Desert stretched east toward Saladin's territory. The first night passed normally. I alternated between standing watch at each window and kneeling in prayer. The moon rose. The stars wheeled overhead. I heard the normal sounds of the fortress. Guard changes, distant conversations, the creak of wooden structures cooling in the night air. Dawn came. I did my final circuit before the relief arrived. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the dust, starting at the door. They walked a straight line to the eastern parapet and stopped. The prints were clear, made by standard Templar boots like mine, but they simply ended at the wall. I measured them against my own boots, the same size, the same wear pattern on the heel that all our boots got from climbing stone stairs. But I hadn't moved from my post all night. I would have seen my own tracks in the dust. Brother Martin arrived with breakfast. I showed him the prints. Dust patterns from the wind, he said. It plays tricks up here. But there had been no wind that night, and wind doesn't make perfect boot prints. I spent the second night watching the floor. The lamp kept the whole room visible. Nothing disturbed the dust except my own careful movements between windows. Morning came. New prints had appeared. A different path this time, from the door to the north parapet, like someone had walked through my vigilant watch without me seeing them, like the stone floor had recorded movements that hadn't happened. The third night, I heard footsteps, clear bootsteps on stone, crossing the room. I spun around. Nothing. The dust was undisturbed. But when I checked at dawn, fresh prints marked the same path I'd heard the steps take. Brother Martin stopped asking about the prints. He'd leave my food by the door without entering. Sometimes I caught him making signs against evil when he thought I wasn't looking. The fourth night brought the circles. I heard the steps again, steady, unhurried. When I checked the floor at dawn, the prints formed a perfect circle in the center of the room, round and round, as if someone had walked the same path for hours. The dust pattern was precise, geometrical. No human pacing could have made such a perfect circle. I spent the fifth night in the center of the room, turning constantly to watch all corners. My neck muscles cramped. My eyes burned. The footsteps came again, but from above me this time, heavy boots on stone, directly over my head. But there was nothing above the tower room, only open sky. The dawn check revealed two concentric circles of prints. The inner circle matched my own boots exactly, probably from my turning vigil through the night. But there was a second, outer circle, same boot pattern as all the others, but larger, as if someone much heavier had made the same circular path around me. On the sixth night, the steps came from all directions at once. A dozen sets of Templar boots marching on stone, around and around and around. I pressed my hands over my ears but couldn't shut it out. The sound filled the tower room until dawn. The floor was covered in overlapping circles when the sun rose. Prints of various sizes, but all with that distinctive Templar boot pattern. They formed complex geometric patterns, circles within circles, spirals, intricate whirls that made my eyes hurt to look at. Then, Brother Martin took one look at the floor and crossed himself. He didn't bring my food that day. They pushed it under the door instead. This is the seventh night, my last vigil in the tower. The steps started at sunset. They're getting closer. Each circuit brings them nearer to where I stand. The dust is rising from the floor now, swirling in the lamplight. It's forming shapes, patterns, like the boot prints, but moving. Dancing, I can make out figures in the dust. Templars walking there. Endless circles. Their boots never touch the ground, but I hear every step. Their shapes are made of dust, but I recognize their movements. The way they walk, the way they turn. They're all me. Different versions from different vigils. Turning and pacing and watching. Some are younger, some older. Some haven't happened yet. We're all here together, walking our circles in the dust. The nearest one just turned to look at me. His face is my face, made of swirling dust and shadow. He's beckoning. The other dust Templars have stopped their pacing. They're all watching now, waiting. A space has opened in their circle, a place for me to join the pattern. My boots are leaving prints in the dust as I write this. Perfect Templar boot prints, marking the beginning of a new circle. The lamp is guttering. The dust is rising. The steps are so loud now. I understand what the 7 nights of vigil are really for. Why we stand watch in this tower. What we're watching for. We're watching for ourselves. I have to go now. They're waiting. The circle isn't complete without me. Listen for our footsteps if you take the vigil entire. Count the prints in the morning dust. Watch for our shapes in the lamplight. We'll be walking our circles. We'll save a space in the pattern for you. found written on a piece of parchment in the highest tower of the Templar fortress at Tyre. The floor was unmarked, except for a single set of bootprints leading from the center of the room to the eastern parapet, where they ended abruptly. The writer was never found. The first death happened exactly as Gigam saw it in his vision. Brother Mark fell from his horse at sunset, his neck broken on the same rock he'd described that morning. I watched it happen from 20 paces away. Every detail matched. The startled whinny of the horse, the angle of his body as it fell, even the way his white cloak settled in the sand. That's when I knew we were all going to die. The mission seemed simple at first. Escort a reliquary from our fortress to Jerusalem. 6 days. Through the desert, 8 of us total. Myself as sergeant, 6 mounted knights, and Brother Thomas carrying the reliquary. Standard escort formation. We'd done it dozens of times. The reliquary itself was small. A wooden box wrapped in leather, sealed with the Templar cross. None of us knew what was inside. Those weren't our orders. Just deliver it safely to the Temple Mount. The visions started the first night. We made camp as usual, posted watches. Nothing strange until morning, when Gigo mentioned his dream about Mark's death, described it in detail, the location, the time, the exact way it would happen. We laughed it off. Desert heat playing tricks. But I noticed Mark's hands shaking as he mounted up. By midday, everyone was talking about their dreams. All different, but all the same too. Each man had seen his own death, clear as day. Brother Thomas saw himself crushed by falling rocks. Guillaume described drowning in sand. Jean saw arrows. Philip saw snakes. All specific, all detailed. I didn't tell them about my vision. Didn't tell them I saw myself burning. We could have turned back. Should have. But orders were orders. The reliquary had to reach Jerusalem. Mark's death shook us. Guillaume's vision coming true sent the men into panic. I had to stop Philip from deserting that night. His hands gripped his sword so tight, his knuckles went white. The visions are a test, Brother Thomas said as we huddled around the fire. Our faith is being challenged. The reliquary sat between us, innocent looking in its wrappings. No one would go near it. The second death came at dawn, exactly as Thomas had dreamed. We were breaking camp when the rocks fell. A whole section of cliff just gave way. He didn't even scream. One moment he was there, the next just gone. The reliquary landed softly in the sand, untouched. I assigned Guillaume to carry it next. His hands shook as he lifted it. "What's inside?" Jean demanded. "What are we really carrying?" "Our orders are to deliver it, not examine it," I said. But I wondered too. The third day brought Jean's vision to life. The arrows came from nowhere. No raiders, no attackers visible, just arrows falling from the empty sky. He tried to run, tried to dodge, but they found him exactly as he'd seen. I watched him fall with 6 shafts in his back, just like in his dream. Philip broke that night, said he wouldn't wait for the snakes to take him, tried to run into the desert. Guillaume and I caught him, but it took both of us to hold him down. "It's testing us," he kept saying. "The reliquary is testing our faith." He was right about the snakes. They came in his sleep, silent, deadly. We found him at dawn, already cold. The bite marks exactly where he'd described them. Just 3 of us left now. Gigam, Brother Robert, and me. Plus the reliquary, riding with Gigam. 3 more days to Jerusalem. Guillaume's drowning happened that afternoon. No water for miles, but he died choking on sand. A dust devil came from nowhere, engulfed him completely. When it cleared, he was gone, just gone. Like the desert had swallowed him whole. The reliquary sat in the sand, waiting. Robert picked it up with shaking hands. That night, he told me his vision. Fire, he said. Like you, we burned together. I nodded. I'd seen it too. Seen us both going up in flames under the desert sun. Should we open it? He asked. See what's killing us. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. But orders were orders. The flames came at noon the next day. No source, no reason. They just appeared. Consumed us both. I felt my flesh char, smelled it burning. Heard Robert's screams match my own. Then, nothing. I opened my eyes. I was standing, unburned. Robert, too. The flames were gone like they'd never existed. The reliquary lay open at our feet, empty. I don't understand, Robert said. We died. I felt it. No, I said. We passed. I understood then. The reliquary wasn't carrying something to Jerusalem. It was carrying us, testing us. Each death, a trial of faith. Each vision, a chance to face our fears and hold true to our duty. The real test wasn't surviving. It was continuing on despite knowing what was coming. Facing our deaths and staying faithful to our mission. We reached Jerusalem the next day. The Temple Mount gleamed in the sun. A group of knights waited for us at the gate. How many started with you? Their leader asked. 8. He nodded. How many survived? All of us, I said, in faith, if not in flesh. He smiled. Then you carried the true reliquary successfully. Faith itself, tested and proven. The box was always empty. The visions were the real test. The others, the ones who died, will be remembered as martyrs. Their faith was pure, even if it wavered at the end. They'll be honored. Robert and I entered Jerusalem alive, but changed. You can't die and return unchanged. Can't face your own end and stay the same man. The empty reliquary was enshrined with honor, they say. It still tests Templars today. Still shows them visions of their deaths. Still proves their faith through fear. I've never taken that desert road again. But sometimes, in my dreams, I burn. And each time, I stand faithful. Each time, I continue on. The reliquary taught us what every Templar must learn. True faith isn't about surviving. It's about continuing on despite knowing what's coming. Even if what's coming is your own end. Recorded in the archives of the Temple Mount. Jerusalem, attributed to Sergeant Michel de Provins, 1187. I broke my vow of silence on the 43rd day. Just 3 words. Watch the door. A whispered warning to Brother Francis as the Saracen patrol passed our hiding spot. Those 3 words saved our lives. They also damned me to this place. The monastery sits alone on a rocky hill outside Antioch. No other buildings for miles, just empty hills and dust. The walls are old, older than the Templars, older than the Crusades. Local Christians say it was built by ancient hermits. They also say those hermits disappeared without trace. I understand why now. Brother Gregory met me at the gate. His lips moved in greeting, but no sound came out. I thought he was maintaining silence. All monasteries have their rules. I nodded respectfully and followed him inside. The courtyard was empty, silent. Not just quiet, completely devoid of sound. My boots should have echoed on the stone. They didn't. The wind should have whistled through the columns. It didn't. Even the birds circling overhead made no noise. I cleared my throat. The sound died inches from my mouth, like something had caught it and smothered it. Brother Gregory led me to my cell. Small room, narrow bed, wooden desk, a single window overlooking the hills. He gestured at a piece of parchment on the desk, written instructions, 3 months penance for breaking silence, prayer and contemplation, speak to no one. Simple enough. I'd expected worse for breaking a Templar vow. The first week seemed normal. I attended prayers with the other monks, took my meals in the refectory, worked in the garden, standard monastery life, just without speaking. The silence was uncomfortable, but not unusual. Then I noticed the birds. They perched on the walls, opened their beaks, but made no sound. Their wings moved silently through the air. Even their claws made no noise on the stone. In the garden, Brother Jerome dropped a clay pot. It shattered on the flagstones. Silently, not a single sound. He didn't seem surprised. I started, watching the other monks more carefully. They moved their lips in prayer, but no whispers came out. At meals, their teeth and jaws worked, but there was no chewing sound. Cups and plates touched the tables without a clink. The silence wasn't just inside the monastery, it spread beyond the walls. The wind moved dust and leaves, but made no noise. Distant thunder brought light but no sound. The world was being muted. By the second week, I couldn't hear my own footsteps. My breathing became silent. Even my heartbeat faded away. I pressed my ears, cleared them, tried everything. The silence just grew deeper. I tried shouting in my cell. Nothing. Screaming. Nothing. The sound died before it left my throat, like something was eating it. The other monks watched me. They understood. I saw it in their eyes. They'd all been through this. All come here for penance. All lost their voices to the silence. Brother Gregory brought another note. The silence must be fed. I tried writing messages, asking questions. The monks would read them, move their lips in silent response, but write nothing down. Their faces showed pity, or maybe fear. The silence kept spreading. By the third week, it reached the hills around the monastery. Rocks fell silently down slopes. Dust storms blew in eerie quiet. A group of travelers passed on the road below. I saw their mouths move in conversation, saw their horses' hooves strike stone, but heard nothing. I watched them until they passed beyond the silence, saw the exact moment sound returned to them. Their voices suddenly carried on the wind. The horses' hooves clattered. They didn't even notice the change. The silence was growing, feeding, spreading. One morning I found Brother Jerome trying to scream. His face was red with effort, veins standing out on his neck. His mouth gaped wide, but nothing came out, not even breath sounds. He saw me watching and gave up. His eyes were wet. I checked my calendar obsessively, counted days until my penance would end. Would my voice come back when I left? Would any sound come back? Brother Gregory left another note. Some silence cannot be broken. I understood then, this wasn't punishment. It was containment. The monastery wasn't built to keep silence in. It was built to keep it from spreading further. The monks weren't here for penance. They were sacrifices. Each broken vow of silence, each voice surrendered, feeding the thing that lived in the quiet, keeping it satisfied, keeping it here, but it was growing stronger. The silence spread further each day. I measured it, marking the point where sound died on my crude map. 1/4 mile 1 week, 1/2 mile the next, growing in a perfect circle with the monastery at its center. At night, I started seeing things in the silence, movements in the dark, ripples in the air where sound should be. Sometimes I caught glimpses of a deeper darkness, something shifting just at the edge of sight, something that drank sound like water. The other monks saw it too. We watched it together, our useless throats trying to scream warnings that never came. I tried to run in the 4th week, made it halfway down the hill before the silence caught me, dragged me back like a physical thing. Cold tendrils of quiet wrapping around my chest, pulling me into the void of sound. Brother Gregory found me, left another note. It keeps what it takes. 59 days now. The silence covers nearly 2 miles in every direction. Birds fall silent when they enter. Its realm, travelers pass through patches of quiet they blame on wind or weather. They don't realize what's happening, don't notice the circle growing. My penance ends in 31 days, but I won't leave, can't leave, none of us can. We're not prisoners of the monastery, we're its wardens. Our stolen voices feed the silence, keep it contained. Without us, it would spread, grow, consume. I watch the hills for travelers now, prayer for their safe passage through the quiet. Count the distance to Antioch and pray the silence never reaches that far. Sometimes in the darkest hours, I think I hear something, not sound, the opposite of sound. The silence itself, breathing, growing, hungry. Brother Gregory left his last note yesterday. Your voice was a small price to pay. He's right. We give up our voices so others can keep theirs. Lock ourselves in silence to keep the quiet from escaping. Feed the darkness our sounds so it doesn't feed on the world. I have paper and ink. I can still warn. Others still communicate. But sometimes I catch myself forgetting words, forgetting what sounds were like. The silence eats memories too. So I write this while I still can, while I still remember sound, while I still remember why we maintain our vigil here in the quiet. If you find this, spread the word. Avoid the monastery near Antioch. Don't try to break our silence. Don't try to save us. And if you've broken a vow of silence, don't come here for penance. The silence has enough voices already, but it's always hungry for more. Found among the effects of a Templar knight who disappeared near Antioch in 1187. The monastery mentioned has never been located. The first map was accurate for exactly 6 hours. I know because I checked it twice that morning, once when I finished drawing it, and again before descending into the catacombs for the afternoon survey. Every passage, every turn, every chamber exactly as I'd charted it over the past week. But when I returned at sunset, the northwest corridor had moved 30 feet to the east. I thought I'd made a mistake. Had to have made a mistake. Stone tunnels don't move. I'd been mapping the catacombs. Beneath Tripoli's Templar fortress for 3 weeks. Standard assignment for a cartographer. The tunnels predated our occupation. Some said they were Roman, others claimed they went back to the Phoenicians. The Grand Master wanted them properly documented, needed to know what lay beneath his fortress. I started the project methodically, established reference points, measured distances, drew precise angles, basic cartography. The first level was simple. Straight corridors, regular chambers. Nothing unusual. The second level proved trickier. The passages twisted more, branched randomly. But still, nothing I couldn't handle. I'd mapped worse caves in Jerusalem. Then I found my first impossible turn. It was a simple corner, turning left from the main corridor. I measured it 3 times. 90 degrees. 30 paces to the next junction. But when I drew it on the map, it overlapped with another passage. A passage I'd already charted. A passage that should have been 50 feet away. Rechecked my measurements. They were correct. Somehow, 2 separate corridors occupied the same space. I reported it to Brother Morris, the fortress architect. The old foundations shift sometimes, he said. Settling stone can distort measurements, but stone doesn't shift in 6 hours. Doesn't change direction while you're looking at it. I started making multiple copies of my maps. Date and time marked on each one. Compared them day to day, hour to hour. The changes became obvious. Corridors moved, chambers expanded or contracted. Staircases appeared where there had been solid walls. Dead ends became passages. Passages became walls. The catacombs were changing, rearranging themselves like a living thing. I found the first note on my 4th week. It was stuck to a wall in a chamber I'd mapped just that morning. Written in my own hand, on my own parchment, but aged yellow and crumbling. Northwest passage unsafe. Leads nowhere now. Check the eastern stairs. I hadn't written it. Couldn't have written it. But there it was, in my distinctive script. The next day, I found another. Fresher, but still older than anything I'd written. 3rd level opening soon. Wait 3 days. 3 days later, a new staircase appeared, leading down to a previously solid rock floor. The notes continued, always in my handwriting, always accurate, always days or weeks or months old, warning of changes yet to come. I started leaving my own notes, questions written on fresh parchment, stuck to walls at junctions. Where do the moving corridors go? Who is leaving these messages? How deep do the catacombs go? The answers came back in my own aged hand. Everywhere and nowhere. You are, you will, you did. Deeper than the maps can show. I was writing them, would write them, had written them. The timing had stopped making sense. Brother Maurice stopped accepting my reports. Said my maps were useless if they couldn't stay accurate for more than a day. Suggested I was going mad from underground work, but I kept mapping, kept measuring, kept watching the catacombs shift and change. The breakthrough came when I found my own skeleton. It was in a chamber I'd mapped just that morning, sitting at a stone table, hunched over a map. Bones yellowed with age, scraps of Templar robes still clinging to them. And there, on the table, preserved somehow in the dry air, was a complete map of the catacombs. Not as they were, as they would be, as they had been, as they could be. All possibilities drawn in my hand, overlapping, shifting, changing on the parchment as I watched. I copied it quickly, my hands shaking. Dates appeared next to passages, when they would open, when they would close, when they would move. Corridors twisted in impossible ways, overlapping in 3 dimensions my maps couldn't capture. The skeleton's right hand still held a quill, still marking changes, still mapping. I ran, sprinted back through the tunnels, following my latest map. Turned a corner, and found myself face to face with myself. Not a skeleton this time. Me, alive, but older. Grey in my beard, lines around my eyes. He nodded like he'd been expecting me. "You'll understand soon," he said. "The maps don't show where the tunnels are. They show where they'll be, where they've been, where they could be. Time moves differently down here." "How long?" I started to ask. "Have I been here? Will you be here? Are we here?" He smiled. "All of it, none of it. The catacombs don't follow. Normal time, normal space." He handed me a stack of blank parchment. "You'll need these for the maps you're going to make. The ones you've already made. The ones you're making now." I looked down at the blank pages. When I looked up, he was gone. But now I understood. The catacombs weren't changing. They were just untethered, free to exist at any point in their history, any possible configuration, all at once. And I wasn't mapping them. I was mapping time itself, as it twisted through these ancient corridors. I went back to the skeleton's chamber. It was where I'd left it, where I would leave it, where I was leaving it now. I sat down at the stone table, pulled out fresh parchment, and began to draw, began to map the ever-shifting paths, began to write notes to myself, past, present, future. I'm still here, still mapping, still watching the corridors change. Sometimes I see other versions of myself. Younger ones just starting their surveys. Older ones checking their measurements. Ancient ones reduced to bone, but still working, still mapping. We're all here, all mapping. All trying to chart the unchartable paths. The catacombs go on. Time shifts, space bends. And we map it all, endlessly, eternally. If you find these maps, these notes, understand this. The catacombs beneath Tripoli don't connect spaces, they connect moments. And once you enter them, you'll always be here. Always have been here. Always will be here. Mapping the impossible, charting the unknowable. Writing notes to yourself across decades, centuries, millennia. I can hear footsteps in the corridor. Another version of myself, coming to make another map. Coming to write another note, coming to understand what I've already learned. Time to leave him a message, time to guide him toward understanding, time to keep mapping. Found in the archives of the Templar fortress at Tripoli, along with hundreds of contradictory maps of the catacombs, all in the same hand, all dated to different years, some dated 2 years yet to come. The dying man told me I would betray the order in 3 days' time. He described the exact moment it would happen, which documents I would steal, which Saracen spy I would meet, where I would hand over the fortress plans, every detail precise and clear. But I had never considered betraying the Templars, had never even thought about it. That was the first confession. I am Brother Raymond, confessor at the Templar fortress of Safed. I hear the sins of dying men. This is what happened during my last week of confessions. It started normally. A messenger arrived at dawn. "Brother Gerard is dying," he said. "He asks for confession." I found Gerard in the fortress infirmary. Arrow wound in the chest, infected. The physician gave him 2 days at most. His skin was grey, but his eyes were clear and alert. "Brother," I said, preparing to take his confession, "speak your sins." He grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong for a dying man. "Not my sins," he said, "yours." Then he told me about my future betrayal. Every detail exact. The names of spies I'd never met. The contents of documents I'd never seen. The amount of gold I would be paid. "It happens in the South Tower," he said. "Thursday at midnight. You'll be wearing a brown cloak, not your white one. The spy's name is Kareem. He has a scar on his left cheek." "That's impossible," I said. "I would never betray the order." Gerard just smiled. "I've seen it. Just like I've seen what happens to Brother Michael tomorrow, and what Sister Agnes does on Friday, and how Thomas dies next week." He told me more confessions, all about future sins, all precise and detailed. Then he fell unconscious, died an hour later. I tried to forget his words. tried to focus on my duties. But the next day, everything he said about Brother Michael came true. I was there when it happened. Saw Michael strike a novice in anger, breaking the boy's jaw. Saw him flee the fortress in shame, exactly as Gerard had described. That night, another dying soldier asked for confession. Arrow wound, like Gerard. When I reached his bedside, he grabbed my arm just as Gerard had. Not my sins, he said. Sister Agnes's. He described how Agnes would steal medicine from the infirmary. Said she would give it to a Jewish family in the city. Said it would happen tomorrow at sunset. I watched the infirmary the next day. Agnes came exactly at sunset. Took exactly the medicines described. I followed her to the city. Watched her give them to the exact family named in the confession. More dying men came. More confessions. Each one telling not their own sins, but future sins of others. Future betrayals, future thefts, future murders. Every detail precise, every prediction accurate. Thomas died exactly as predicted, falling from the battlements while drunk on duty. Sister Marie broke her vow of chastity with exactly the merchant named in the confession. Brother James stole exactly the amount of gold described, and each dying man looked at me with those same clear, knowing eyes. Each one reminded me of my coming betrayal. I stopped sleeping, spent nights pacing my cell. How could they know these things? How could Gerard have known about my betrayal when I had never even considered it? But as Thursday approached, I found myself looking at the South Tower. Found myself wondering about fortress defenses. Found myself thinking about how much gold a spy might pay. The thoughts came unbidden, like the confessions were planting them in my mind, like hearing about my future sin was making it more real. Another dying man called for me on Wednesday. Old knight, gut wound from a bandit attack. His eyes were different from the others. Sad, almost pitying. Your confession is different, he said. You still have a choice. What do you mean, the others? Their sins were already in their hearts. The confessions just revealed what they would choose to do. But you, Brother Raymond, you never thought of betrayal until Gerard told you about it. He gripped my arm. Listen carefully. At sunset tomorrow, you'll find a brown cloak in your cell. Put it on, go to the South Tower. A man named Kareem will approach you. He'll offer gold for fortress plans, just as Gerard said. Yes, but here's what Gerard didn't see. You can choose differently. The confession doesn't have to come true. He died before I could ask more. Thursday came. I found the brown cloak in my cell at sunset, exactly as predicted. My hands shook as I lifted it. I put it on, went to the South Tower, waited. Kareem came at midnight, just as Gerard had described. Scar on his left cheek, bag of gold in his hand. You have the plans, he asked. I reached into my cloak, felt the rolled parchments there, though I had no memory of taking them, no memory of copying the fortress defenses. But there they were, in my hand. Gerard's confession echoed in my head. The future he'd seen, the betrayal that seemed inevitable now. But the old knight's words came back to, you can choose differently. I drew my dagger instead of the plans, called the guard instead of completing the exchange. Kareem was arrested, the gold confiscated, the plans returned. I waited for more dying men after that, waited for more confessions of future sins, but they stopped coming. Instead, I started hearing regular confessions again. Past sins, known sins, normal sins. But sometimes, late at night, I think about Gerard's confession. about how hearing my future sin almost made it happen, about how knowing the future can shape it. And I wonder about the other confessions I hear now. Wonder if telling past sins prevents future ones, or if confession itself is a kind of prophecy, speaking our sins aloud to keep them from coming true. The dying men of Safed taught me this. The future is not fixed. Confession is not just about the past. Sometimes, hearing our future sins gives us the chance to choose differently. I still serve as confessor here, still listen to the sins of dying men, but now I listen differently. Listen for the sins that haven't happened yet. Listen for the choices still to come. And sometimes, very rarely, a dying man looks at me with those same clear, knowing eyes. Starts to speak of future sins instead of past ones. I stop them then. Tell them I don't want to know. The future should remain unconfessed. We have enough sins in the present to contend with. From the private journal of Brother Raymond, confessor at the Templar fortress of Saft, dated 1189. The first coin appeared in the morning count, a silver denarius that didn't match any currency in our ledgers. The face on it belonged to Brother Martin, our fortress commander. His features were perfect, captured in silver as if he'd been born in ancient Rome. When I showed it to him at breakfast, his hands shook. By sunset, we found his empty robes in the courtyard. Just empty cloth, arranged as if he was still wearing them, standing at attention like he always did. But Martin was gone. I was the treasurer of the Templar fortress at Tartus. I handled our banking operations, money changing, letters of credit, merchant accounts, simple work, numbers and ledgers. Nothing strange until the coins started appearing. The morning after Martin vanished, I found 3 more coins in the counting room. Different denominations, different metals, but each bore a perfect portrait of someone in the fortress. Brother Thomas, the weaponsmith, Sister Marie from the infirmary, young Philip, one of our novices. They all disappeared by nightfall. Just empty clothes remaining, arranged in everyday poses. Thomas at his forge, Marie tending her herbs, Philip kneeling in prayer. I locked the coins in my strongbox, wrapped them in blessed cloth, posted guards at the treasury door. It didn't matter. More appeared every morning, and every evening more people vanished. I studied the coins obsessively. The metal was wrong, not gold or silver or copper. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive. Under a magnifying glass, the portraits seemed to move slightly, like the subjects were breathing. The other brothers started avoiding me. They knew about the coins, knew that seeing your face on one meant disappearing by sunset. They crossed themselves when I passed, whispered prayers, kept their eyes down, afraid of what new coins I might be carrying. A week after the first coin, I found one with my own face. I spent that day putting my accounts in order, writing final letters, preparing for whatever would happen at sunset. But sunset came and went. I didn't vanish. Instead, I watched Brother James disappear. His coin had appeared the same morning as mine. That's when I realized the truth. I wasn't meant to disappear. I was meant to witness, to keep count, to maintain the ledger of the vanished. The coins kept coming, 2 or 3 each morning, always in the counting room, always with perfect portraits of people in the fortress. By the second week, half our garrison was gone, just empty clothes remaining, going through the motions of daily life. I started hearing the counting at night, the soft click of coins being stacked, the scratch of entries being made in ledgers. But when I checked the counting room, it was empty. Just the sound of money being tallied by invisible hands. The merchants who used our banking services noticed something wrong. They'd come to make deposits or exchange currency and find empty robes conducting transactions. They stopped coming. Our banking operations dwindled. In the third week, the coins changed. Now they showed people I didn't recognize. Future residents of the fortress, maybe, or past ones. The portraits had different styles of Templar robes, different fashions of hair and beard. Some looked ancient. Some looked like they hadn't been born yet. I asked Brother Andrew, our historian, to examine them. He found dates worked into the designs. Dates spanning centuries, past and future. Then his coin appeared, and by sunset he was just another set of empty robes in the library. The fortress felt larger with so many people gone. Footsteps echoed longer in the corridors. Voices carried further in the halls. But there were other sounds now. The constant counting, the clink of invisible coins, the scratch of phantom quills on parchment. Sometimes I caught glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, shapes going about daily tasks, transparent figures that vanished when I turned to look. The empty robes began to move on, their own, continuing their routines without bodies to fill them. I found Brother Martin's robes still standing at attention in the courtyard each morning. Thomas's empty sleeves still worked the forge. Marie's hollow habit still tended patience. They carried on their duties, just without physical form. In the fourth week, I discovered what the coins were made of. I was examining a new one under my magnifying glass, when I noticed a pattern in the metal. Not a pattern, tissue. The coins were made of flesh, preserved somehow, pressed thin, transformed into metallic discs, but still flesh. I dropped the coin. It bounced with a wet sound, left a smear of copper-colored liquid on the floor. When I picked it up again, the portrait was bleeding slightly. The next morning, I found the ledger. It wasn't one of ours. The cover was made of skin. The pages were vellum, but wrong somehow. Too soft, too warm. The entries went back centuries. Lists of names, dates, tallies of coins. All in my handwriting, not just my current writing. Pages from decades ago in my young, unsteady script. Pages dated decades in the future in my aged, shaking hand. All recording the same thing. People vanishing, coins appearing, the fortress slowly emptying of physical form. I wasn't the first treasurer to keep this count. I wouldn't be the last. The ledger showed treasurers going back to the fortress's founding, all watching their companions disappear, all recording the tally, all becoming part of the eternal audit. Now I understand my role. I'm not just counting coins or recording transactions. I'm keeping track of the fortress's transformation, watching it shed physical form, watching it become something else, something that exists in all times at once. The coins are still coming. 3 more this morning. The portraits show faces I'll meet years from now. People who will serve in this fortress long after I'm gone. Their coins are waiting to be counted. Their disappearances waiting to be recorded. I can hear the counting now. Getting closer, the click of coins, the scratch of quills, the rustle of pages. The sounds of an eternal audit being conducted across time. My coin still hasn't taken me. I remain solid while others fade. Remain to count, to record, to witness. But sometimes I look at my hands, and they seem less substantial. Sometimes I catch my reflection and can see through it slightly. Sometimes I feel myself spreading across time, like the fortress itself, existing in All moments at once. I'll keep counting until I fade. Keep recording until I'm just another entry in the ledger. Keep tracking the fortress's transformation until I'm part of it. Listen for the counting if you come to Tartus. Listen for coins being stacked by invisible hands. For ledgers being updated by phantom quills. We're still here, still counting, still keeping the eternal audit. Join us, if you dare. Your coin is already waiting in tomorrow's count. Found in the treasury of the Templar. Fortress at Tartus, along with a ledger bound in unusual leather and a collection of coins made of unknown metal. The coins are held in the Vatican archives. They are not available for public viewing. The words appeared on the page as I watched. Black ink flowing across blank parchment like water, forming letters in an unseen hand. It wrote, "Tomorrow at dawn, Brother Michel will fall from his horse and break his neck." I closed the manuscript, locked it in its chest. When I checked again at midnight, new words had appeared. It begins now. Michel died exactly as described. I watched him fall, watched his neck snap against a rock, just as the manuscript had written it. I found the book 3 days ago in the library of our fortress at Montfort. Plain leather binding, no title. The first half contained normal monastery records, grain shipments, tithe collections, garrison rotations. The rest was blank, empty pages waiting to be filled, until they started filling themselves. The writing began that first night. I was cataloguing library editions, working late by lamplight. The manuscript lay open on my desk. As I watched, words began appearing on the blank page. Brother Thomas will cut his hand while sharpening swords to Mara. The wound will fester. He will lose 2 fingers. I slammed the book shut, tried to convince myself I was tired, seeing things. But when I opened it again, the words remained. And the next day, Thomas cut his hand, lost his fingers to infection, just as written. More predictions followed. Small things at first. Brother Gerard would spill wine at dinner. A roof tile would fall and break the chapel window. Sister Marie would find a dead cat in the garden. All came true, exactly as described. I told no one. Who would believe me? A book that writes itself, predicts the future. I'd be declared mad, or worse, a heretic. But I couldn't stop reading. Each night, new words appeared. Each day, they came true. The predictions grew darker. Brother Philip would be caught stealing from the treasury. Sister Agnes would break her vows with a merchant. Young Simon would fall from the walls while drunk on duty. I tried warning them, tried preventing the events. But everything happened exactly as written. Philip was caught. Agnes was discovered. Simon fell. Then the manuscript started writing about the future of the fortress itself. Troop movements, supply shipments, guard rotations, every detail of our daily operations, predicted days in advance. The first attack came 3 days after the manuscript described it. Bandits, exactly where and when it said they would strike. We repelled them, but lost 4 men. The same 4 men named in the prediction. Should have burned the book then. Should have destroyed it before it could write more. But I couldn't. The words kept coming, and I kept reading. Last night, it wrote something new, something worse. Tomorrow, the Saracens come. They have a spy inside the fortress. The outer walls will fall at noon. The inner bailey by sunset. The garrison will burn. I'm writing this now as I watch new words appear in the manuscript. They're flowing across the page faster than before, urgent black letters, spelling out our doom. The spy is Brother Marcus. He has already signaled the enemy. They approach from the east, hidden in the morning fog. 200 mounted warriors, 500 foot soldiers. They carry Greek fire. I hear movement in the corridor, footsteps approaching the library. The manuscript is still writing. The door opens. Brother Marcus enters, with his knife drawn. The handle is turning. The manuscript continues. He finds the book, reads these words, realizes he has been revealed. Marcus stands in the doorway. His face is pale as he sees the manuscript on my desk, sees the words still forming. His hand grips a dagger. You can't change what's written, I tell him. It's already happening. The manuscript writes. Marcus lunges forward, blade aimed at the reader's heart. Pain explodes in my chest. Warm blood soaks my robe. Marcus stares in horror as words keep appearing on the page. The blade strikes true. But the reader's death was written days ago, in words yet to be seen. I'm falling. The manuscript continues writing, even as my blood drips onto its pages. Marcus tries to burn the book. The flames do not catch. The words keep coming. He reads his own fate, sees his own death in the coming battle, tries to run, but every step is already written. Marcus is backing away. The manuscript's pages are turning by themselves, revealing more text. The reader dies, but the book remains. New hands will find it. New eyes will read these words. The story continues, as it always has, as it always will. My vision is darkening. The last thing I see is Marcus fleeing the library. The last thing I hear is the scratch of invisible quill on parchment. The manuscript writes its final words to me. Your part is finished. Rest now. Others will read what comes next. The following was found written in blood on the manuscript's last page. I am Brother Marcus. The book speaks truth. I killed the reader, but I cannot escape what is written. The are inside the walls now. Greek fire burns the fortress. Everything happens as the manuscript foretold. I write this with my own blood, joining my words with all the others recorded here. Let those who find this manuscript know, the words cannot be stopped. The story writes itself. Future and past flow together on these pages. I hear fighting in the corridor. The manuscript shows me my next moments. Marcus makes his final confession in blood. The door bursts open. A Saracen blade ends his tale. They're here. The blade is already swinged. The rest is illegible, obscured by bloodstains. The manuscript was recovered from the ruins of Montfort Fortress after its fall. It is said that new words still appear on its pages, recording events yet to come. The Templar archives keep it sealed in a lead box. None are permitted to read it. The first time I saw him pass through the gates, he was young, maybe 20. Brown pilgrim's robe, walking staff, the usual shell marking him as bound for Santiago. The second time, an hour later, he looked 30. Same clothes, same face, but older. By sunset, I'd watched him age 50 years, passing through my gate again and again. No one else seemed to notice. No one else saw him but me. I've been gate guard at Chastel Blanc for 6 years. Check papers, record names, watch for trouble. Simple work, until the pilgrims started passing through. It was a normal day at first. Hot sun, clear sky, steady stream of travelers. Merchants heading to market, farmers bringing crops, pilgrims seeking shelter. I logged each one in my record book. Standard procedure. The pilgrim arrived at midday. Nothing unusual about him. Dusty robes, walking staff, pilgrims, shell, young man, dark hair, tired eyes. showed me his papers, all in order. "Godspeed," I said, waving him through. He nodded, passed under the arch. I went back to my records. An hour later, he came again. Same clothes, same papers, but older now. Lines around his eyes, grey in his beard. I checked my book. No record of his first passing. "Didn't you just?" I started to ask. He walked through without stopping. Other guards didn't react, just nodded like they'd never seen him before. He came back through the gate at sunset. Now his hair was white, his face deeply lined, same clothes, worn thin with age, same papers, yellow and cracking. Had to be 60, maybe 70 years old, but the clothes were identical. The staff had the same notch in its wood. The papers showed the same date. I asked Brother Thomas about him at dinner. "No pilgrims matching that description today," he said. "Just the usual traffic. But I'd logged the pilgrim 3 times. Except the entries weren't in my book. Just blank spaces where I knew I'd written them." That night, I saw the pilgrim again. He stood outside the gates in the moonlight, ancient now, bent with age. He looked straight at me and nodded. Then I saw another figure approaching the gate. Young, wearing pilgrim's robes. As he passed under the arch, I recognized him. The same pilgrim, young again, starting his cycle once more. The ancient version watched him pass, then turned away, disappeared into the darkness. Next day, same thing. Young pilgrim at dawn, middle-aged at noon, elderly by sunset. Each time through my gate, a little older. Each time, only I saw him. I started keeping separate records, private notes about the pilgrim's passings. But the words vanished as soon as I wrote them. The ink faded before it could dry. The other guards thought I was going mad. Maybe I was, but I kept watching, kept counting his passings. A pattern emerged. 7 crossings each day, 7 stages of age, 7 versions of the same man walking an endless circle through my gate. Then I started seeing reflections, glimpses of myself in puddles, in polished metal, in window glass, but not my current face. Older versions, grayer, more lined, like I was aging with each passing of the pilgrim. I checked my official portrait in the garrison records. It showed me as I looked now, but when I glanced away and back, it had aged, just slightly, just enough to notice. The pilgrim's path never varied, through the gate, into the fortress, out the far gate, around the walls, back through my gate again, 7 times, 7 ages, 7 versions, each walking the same steps. After 2 weeks, I saw myself in the reflections, not my face, but my whole form, following the pilgrim, walking his path, aging with each circuit. They were echoes, future versions of me, following future versions of him. I was becoming part of his cycle. Brother Thomas found me staring at my reflection in a water barrel. "You look pale," he said. "When did you last sleep?" I couldn't remember. The faces in the water had me transfixed. My face, aging year by year as I watched. "I'm fine," I said. But that night, I saw my future self standing outside the gates, grey-haired, wrinkled, wearing my guard's uniform, watching the young pilgrim approach, starting the cycle again. I tried to break the pattern, tried to stop the pilgrim at the gate, but my hands passed through him like smoke. Tried to follow him inside the fortress, but he vanished as soon as he passed the inner walls. Only at my gate could I see him clearly. Only there did he seem solid, real. A month passed. My reflection aged years each day. The other guards started whispering, said I looked different, older, like I was aging too fast. I was becoming like the pilgrim, caught in the circle, passing again and again through my own gate, growing older with each circuit. Last night, I saw the end of my cycle. My eldest self stood at the gate, ancient in my uniform, watching the youngest version take up his post, seeing the young pilgrim approach. Now I understand. I'm not watching the pilgrim's cycle. I'm watching my own. Every guard at this gate has lived this circle, watched themselves age, seen their reflections grow older, become part of the endless procession through the arch. We're all pilgrims here, all walking the same path, all aging in circles, passing through our own gates again and again. This is my last entry as gate guard at Chastel Blank. My youngest self takes up the post tomorrow, starts his own circle, his own 7 ages. I've served my time, walked my path, grown old watching myself grow. Old. Look for me if you pass through these gates. Look for an old man in a guard's uniform, watching a young pilgrim approach. Look for your own reflection in the puddles, aging as you watch. We're all here, all walking our circles, all passing through the gates of time. Your path is waiting. Your reflection is aging. The gates are always open. Found in the guardhouse of Chastel Blanc, the writer was never identified, though guards still report seeing an elderly pilgrim passing through the gates at sunset, followed by an old man in a guard's uniform. Both figures vanish if approached. The first sign was the letters. They stopped coming 3 weeks ago. No reports, no supply requests, no routine correspondence from the Templar fortress at Beaufort. Just silence. They sent me to investigate. I found the fortress intact, the gates open, the garrison going about their duties. But no one would look at me. No one would speak to me. No one seemed to know I was there. I'm Brother Jacques, courier for the Templar Order. When fortresses go quiet, they send me to find out why. The road to Beaufort was normal enough. Dusty track through the hills, steep climb to the fortress gates. No signs of battle, no evidence of attack. The walls stood unbreached, the banners still flew. The gates were open, no guards challenged me. I rode into the courtyard unchallenged. Knights and sergeants crossed the yard. Servants carried water. Guards walked the walls. Everything looked routine, but something felt wrong. I dismounted, approached a group of knights by the stables. "Brothers," I said, "I bring messages from Jerusalem." They continued their conversation, didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me. I moved closer, waved my hand in front of one knight's face. No reaction. He stared right through me. The stable master walked past, leading a horse. I grabbed his arm. My hand passed through him like smoke. My heart pounded. Sweat ran down my back despite the cool air. I was here. I was solid. I could feel the ground under my feet, feel the wind on my face. But to them, I didn't exist. I ran to the keep, climbed the stairs to the commander's office. Brother Gerald sat at his desk, writing in the garrison ledger. Same position I'd seen him in dozens of times before when delivering messages. "Brother Gerald," I said. "It's Jax. What's happening here?" He kept writing. I looked over his shoulder at the ledger. The pages were blank. His quill made no marks on the paper, but his hand kept moving, writing invisible words. I checked the other records in his office. All blank. Supply lists, duty rosters, Patrol reports. Nothing but empty pages. But the knights and sergeants I saw consulting them nodded as if reading vital information. The chapel was worse. Brothers knelt in prayer, lips moving silently. The priest conducted mass, gesturing over an empty altar. No bread, no wine. Just remembered movements, going through the motions of forgotten rituals. In the refectory, they sat at tables with empty plates, lifted invisible cups, chewed nothing, swallowed air. My hands shook as I made notes in my journal. The ink stayed visible, at least. My words didn't fade. But when I checked the entry later, the edges of the letters looked softer, less distinct. I spent that first night in the guest quarters. No one had assigned me a room. No one knew I was there. I simply picked an empty chamber and stayed. The fortress followed its routine. Guards changed shifts. Knights trained in the yard. Servants cleaned and cooked. But there was no sound of clashing swords. No smell of food. No noise of daily life. Just silence and empty motion. I noticed my boots stopped making noise on the stone floors. Couldn't hear my own breathing. Couldn't even hear my heartbeat. Looking down, I saw my feet were less distinct. The edges of my body looked blurred, like a charcoal drawing someone had smudged. I checked my reflection in a water barrel. Could barely see myself. Just a vague shape, growing fainter by the hour. That's when I found the last real message. Tucked in a corner of the chapel, a scrap of parchment dated 3 weeks ago. Saladin's army approached at dawn. We were ready, walls manned, weapons prepared. But when they attacked, their arrows passed through us. Their swords couldn't touch us. We couldn't touch them. We watched them take the fortress, watched them walk through our walls, through our bodies, watched them claim Beaufort as their own. But we remained, still walking our paths, still performing our duties, still defending a fortress we know. Longer truly occupy. We're fading now, becoming memory, becoming echoes. If you find this, don't stay. The fortress pulls you in, makes you part of its remembering, makes you fade like us. Get out while you're still solid, while you still cast a shadow, while you still leave footprints in the dust. We are the garrison of Beaufort. We died 3 weeks ago, but we're still here, still serving, still fading. Join us if you must. Fade with us if you will. The fortress always needs more ghosts. My hands trembled as I read it. Looked at my own body, growing less substantial by the moment. I ran for the gates. Tried to leave, but the fortress pulled at me. Each step was harder than the last. Like walking through deep water. I made it to the courtyard. Saw my horse was gone. Just empty air where I'd left him. Looking back at my trail, my footprints were already fading. My shadow was almost invisible in the sunlight. The garrison continued their rounds. Knights patrolled, servants worked. Guards watched. All going through the motions of life they no longer possessed. I'm still here, still writing, but the ink grows fainter with each word. My hands are almost transparent now. The fortress has me. I'm becoming part of its memory, part of its endless routine. If you find this journal, leave immediately. Don't look at the garrison. Don't try to help us. Just run. We are the ghosts of Beaufort, the echoes of its fall, the memories of its last defense. I can barely see my hands now, barely feel the quill. The words are fading as I write them. The fortress calls, my duties await. The eternal garrison needs another ghost. I go now to walk the walls, to stand my watch, to fade into memory. Look for me in the towers at sunset. Look for all of us, endlessly defending our fallen fortress. We're still here, we're still serving, we're still... The rest of the entry fades to blank parchment. The journal was found by Templar scouts 3 months after Beaufort's fall to Saladin. The fortress was empty of both Saracen and Templar forces. Local peasants claimed to see figures walking the walls at night, transparent in the moonlight, eternally guarding their lost stronghold. The stone steps were cold under my feet. 147 steps to the top of the tower. I had counted them 3 times already. The night watch would last 8 hours. I was alone. My name is Brother Thomas. I joined the Knights Templar 6 months ago. This was my first solo night watch at the fortress of Chateau on the coast of the Holy Land. The year was 1218. The tower stood at the northernmost point of the fortress. The other knights called it the Silent Tower. No one told me why. The senior knights just smiled when I asked. Now it was my turn to find out. I reached the top of the tower at sunset. The wooden door to the watchroom creaked as I pushed it open. The room was circular, 20 feet across. Arrow slits lined the walls at regular intervals. A narrow cot sat in one corner. A wooden table held a clay pitcher of water and a single candle. The sun disappeared behind the Mediterranean. Darkness crept in through the arrow slits. I lit the candle and began my first round of the tower top. My footsteps echoed on the stone floor. The sound bounced off the walls. Every 10 steps, I stopped to look out through an arrow slit. The fortress walls below were quiet. Torches flickered at regular intervals. Other guards made their rounds. The first 2 hours passed slowly. I paced. I counted steps. I watched the stars appear. The candle burned lower. Then I heard it. A faint sound coming from somewhere below. Singing, male voices chanting in Latin. I froze mid-step and listened. The voices were distant but clear. They came from the direction of the old chapel in the eastern courtyard. That was impossible. The old chapel had been abandoned for decades. The roof had partially collapsed during a siege 30 years ago. No one went there anymore. The knights used the new chapel in the western wing for services. I leaned out an arrow slit and looked down at the eastern courtyard. It was empty, but the singing continued. The Latin words were familiar, part of the initiation ritual for new Templar knights. I had heard those same chants 6 months ago at my own initiation. My hands gripped the stone windowsill. The singing grew louder. More voices joined the chant. The words were clear now. Nen nobis, Domini, nen nobis, sed nomini te dag gloriam. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name give glory. But something was wrong. The words were reversed, backwards, like hearing your own voice played backwards. My stomach tightened. I forced myself to continue my rounds. 10 steps. Stop. Look. Listen. The singing faded. By midnight, silence had returned. Maybe I had imagined it. The next night was the same. Sunset, darkness, silence, then singing. But this time, it started earlier, and it was louder. During the day, I asked the other knights about the old chapel. Most shrugged. A few made the sign of the cross and walked away. Finally, an old sergeant pulled me aside. "The records room," he whispered. "Look in the duty logs. From 30 years ago, before the siege, the records room was in the basement of the keep. Rows of wooden shelves held scrolls and bound volumes. The duty logs were on the bottom shelf. covered in dust. I found the ones from 30 years ago. The handwriting was faded, but legible. Night watch assignments for the Silent Tower. 6 names listed over 6 months. After each name, a single word. Missing Brother Gerard. Missing Brother William. Missing Brother Paul. Missing Brother Simon. Missing Brother James. Missing Brother Matthew. Missing all disappeared during their night watch. All during their first year as knights. All from the Silent Tower. The sergeant found me later. His eyes were worried. "You should ask to be reassigned," he said. I took a vow of obedience. I replied. I was ordered to guard the tower. He made the sign of the cross and walked away. The third night, the singing started at sunset. More voices, louder. The Latin words echoed off the stone walls. But now I could hear something else underneath. Words in a language I didn't recognize. Older than Latin. The sound made my teeth hurt. I paced faster. Sweat ran down my back despite the cold. The candle flame danced wildly, though there was no wind. 10 steps. Stop. Look. Listen. The voices were closer now. They seemed to come from the tower stairs. I pressed my ear to the wooden door. The singing pulsed through the wood. The door handle was ice cold. Something scratched at the door, like fingernails on wood. I stumbled back. My heel caught on a loose stone. I fell. The candle dropped and went out. Darkness flooded the room. The singing rose to a roar. The door handle began to turn. I scrambled to my feet and fumbled for my flint. My hands shook as I relit the candle. The door was closed. The handle was still. Silence had returned, but something had changed. The walls of the room looked wrong. The stone blocks seemed to pulse in the candlelight. The shadows in the corners moved when I wasn't looking directly at them. I forced myself to continue my rounds. 10 steps. Stop. Look. Listen. The 4th night was clear and cold. Stars blazed overhead. The fortress was quiet. I had spent the day in prayer. The chapel priests spoke of faith and duty. They didn't mention the old chapel, or the singing, or the missing nights. But this night was different. The singing didn't start at sunset. The tower remained silent as darkness fell. Hours passed. Nothing. Maybe it was over. Maybe I had passed some test of faith. Then, at midnight, I heard it. Not singing this time. Footsteps on the tower stairs. Slow, heavy. Getting closer, I drew my sword. The steel rasped against the scabbard. The sound echoed in the silent room. The footsteps reached the door, stopped. A voice spoke. My voice. It was speaking the words from my initiation ceremony. The secret words that only Knights Templar knew. The words we were forbidden to reveal under pain of death. But the voice spoke. Then backwards. Reversed. Wrong. The door handle turned. The wood creaked. I raised my sword. The blade trembled in the candlelight. The door opened. The doorway was empty. But the singing started again, louder than ever. Dozens of voices, hundreds, all chanting in that twisted, reversed Latin. And now I recognized the voices. Brother Gerard, Brother William, Brother Paul, Brother Simon, Brother James, Brother Matthew. All the missing knights, all singing together, all calling my name. The candle went out. In the darkness, I felt hands on my shoulders. Cold hands. Many hands. The voices whispered in my ear. Still backwards. Still wrong. But now I understood the words. They were telling me the truth about my initiation. About what the words really meant. about what really happened in that ceremony 6 months ago, about what I had really joined. The hands pulled me toward the door, toward the stairs, toward the old chapel. I never saw the silent tower again. They found my sword the next morning, and these words scratched into the stone wall. Non nobis, Domini, non nobis. The tower is still there, still silent, still waiting. They say on quiet nights you can hear singing, Latin chants, backwards and wrong. And if you listen carefully, you might hear my voice among them. After all, we're all brothers here, forever. The next young knight takes his post at sunset tomorrow. 147 steps to the top. Will be waiting. The manuscript arrived at dawn. A Templar courier delivered it wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with red wax. The seal bore the mark of our monastery in Antioch. I didn't know then that breaking that seal would change everything. I am Brother Marcus, head scribe of the Templar monastery in Acre. For 15 years, I've translated texts from Greek, Arabic, and Aramaic. Ancient scrolls, military documents, religious texts. This manuscript was different. The courier wouldn't meet my eyes when he handed it over. His hands shook. He left quickly, making the sign of the cross as he went. The first thing I noticed was the weight. The manuscript was heavier than it should have been. The parchment felt wrong under my fingers. Too thick, too cold. I broke the seal in my scriptorium. The room was small, lit by 3 tall windows. Shelves of manuscripts lined the walls. My writing desk faced east, toward Jerusalem. The manuscript was bound in black leather. No title, no markings. Just smooth, dark leather that seemed to swallow the morning light. I opened it. The first page was blank except for a single line of text in Latin. Confessions of the Brothers of the Temple, Antioch Vault Records. My hands trembled as I turned to the second page. The text was dense, written in a cramped hand. Greek letters mixed with Latin. Some words were in languages I didn't recognize. I began to translate. The first confession was simple enough. A Templar knight describing guard duty at the Antioch monastery, normal night watch records. Then the words changed. I blinked. The text shifted on the page. Letters rearranged themselves when I looked away. When I looked back, the confession was different. The knight now described something he'd seen in the monastery's lower vaults. Something that moved in the darkness. Something that whispered. I rubbed my eyes. Lack of sleep, I told myself. I'd been working too hard. Brother Thomas came in with breakfast. He was my assistant, a young scribe, with steady hands and sharp eyes. Help me with this translation, I said. He sat beside me. We worked through the morning. Page after page of confessions. The text kept changing. Every time we looked away, the words were different when we looked back. By noon, Brother Thomas was sweating despite the cool air. His hands shook as he copied the translations. The words, he whispered. They move. I saw it too. Letters crawling across the page like ants. Words rearranging themselves into new confessions, new horrors. That night, Brother Thomas woke the monastery with his screaming. They found him in his cell, eyes wide, repeating words in a language none of us knew. The same words that had appeared in the manuscript that afternoon. They took him to the infirmary. He wouldn't stop screaming, wouldn't stop repeating those words. I went back to work alone. The confessions grew darker, nights describing things they'd found deep beneath the Antioch monastery, ancient chambers, older than the building itself. older than Christianity. The words kept changing, but now they changed even while I watched. Letters flowed like water across the parchment. Brother Michael joined me the next day, then Brother John, both experienced scribes. Within 2 days, they were both in the infirmary with Brother Thomas, all speaking those strange words, all staring at nothing with wide, frightened eyes. I couldn't stop translating. The manuscript seemed to call to me. The confessions pulled me deeper. A night describing a hidden door, a staircase spiraling down into darkness, chambers carved with symbols that hurt the eyes, something waiting in those chambers, something old, something hungry. I found the records room that evening, scrolls about the manuscript, previous translation attempts. Every translator had gone mad, always on the same page, page 47. I checked my work. I was on page 46. That night, the words in the manuscript spoke to me, actually spoke, whispers, rising from the parchment. Those same strange words my fellow scribes were repeating in the infirmary. I understood them now. They were directions, instructions, how to find the door, the staircase, the chambers beneath Antioch, how to find what was waiting there. The next morning, I reached page 47. The text didn't change this time. It stayed fixed on the page, clear, terrible. It was a detailed account of what the knights had found in those ancient chambers, what lived there, what it wanted, what it had been waiting for. The words described its plan, how it had waited centuries for someone to find the manuscript, to translate it, to understand. Each failed translator had brought it closer to waking. Each attempt had strengthened it. I was the last translator needed. My understanding would complete the cycle, would let it finally wake up, finally break free. The words kept coming, flowing across the page, burning themselves into my mind. I tried to look away, couldn't. The manuscript grew hot under my fingers. The leather binding pulsed like a living thing. I heard scratching from inside the pages, like something trying to get out. The door to my scriptorium slammed shut. The windows went dark. The manuscript began to glow. Dark light poured from between the pages. I saw what the knights had seen, the chambers beneath Antioch, the thing that waited there. It was awake now, thanks to me. Thanks to all of us who had tried to translate its words. The manuscript burned in my hands, but I couldn't let go. The thing from the chambers reached through the pages, through time and space. Through my mind, I tried to scream. The sound came out as those same strange words. The words from the manuscript. The words that all the other translators were still repeating in the infirmary. The words that would wake more of them. They found me the next morning, still holding the smoking remains of the manuscript, still repeating those words. They put me in the infirmary. With the others, we're all still here, still speaking those words, still helping it wake up. The manuscript is gone, burned to ash, but it doesn't matter now. The words are out, spreading, growing. There are other manuscripts, other monasteries, other translators, all helping it wake up, all part of its plan. You can hear us at night, all of us speaking those words, getting louder, stronger. It's almost time now. Can you read these words? Really read them. Look closer. Look away. Look back. See how they change. The box was small, simple wood, iron bands, 3 locks. They gave me the keys at dawn. The Grand Master himself handed them over in the Temple Mount vault beneath Jerusalem. Take it to Paris, he said. Don't open it. Don't lose it. Don't stop. until you reach the temple. I am Brother Jacques de Moore, 20 years a Templar knight, 15 years in the Holy Land. I've escorted countless relics, documents, and treasures. This was different. The Grand Master wouldn't tell me what was in the box. His hands shook when he gave me the keys. 5 other knights would travel with me. Brothers Mark, Felipe, Robert, Jean, and Gigam. All veterans, all men I trusted. We left Jerusalem at first light. 6 riders, 3 pack horses. The box was strapped to my saddle. I felt its weight against my leg. The first strange thing happened at noon. We stopped to water the horses. Brother Mark removed his helm to drink. His face had changed. Not dramatically, just different. His nose was slightly longer. His eyes a different shade of brown. Small changes. I blinked. His face was normal again. We rode on. The coastal road to Acre was busy. Merchants, pilgrims, other Templars. Normal traffic. That night, we camped in a Templar way station. Stone walls, good sight lines, defendable position. Standard procedure. Brother Felipe took first watch. I checked the box before sleeping. Still sealed, still heavy. I woke to Brother Guillaume shaking me. "Something's wrong with Felipe," he said. Felipe was at his post, standing straight, staring east, not moving. "Brother Felipe," I approached slowly. He turned. His face had changed, like Mark's had, but more, wider jaw, different ears, still Felipe, but wrong. He blinked, shook his head, asked what was wrong. His face was normal again. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Dawn revealed more changes, small ones. Robert's hair was lighter. Jean's scar was on the wrong side of his chin. No one else seemed to notice. We rode hard that day. The box grew heavier against my leg. In Acre, we booked passage on a Templar ship. 3 weeks to Marseille. The changes accelerated at sea. Day 3, Mark was taller. Felipe's eyes were green instead of blue. Day 7, Robert spoke with a slight stutter he'd never had before. Day 12, Guillaume's sword hand was his left instead of his right. They didn't notice the changes in each other. Only I saw them. The box grew heavier every day. At night, I heard them talking in their sleep, all saying the same things, describing the same journey. This journey, but they spoke of making it a year ago, with the same box, the same mission. I knew that was impossible. I'd been in Jerusalem for the past 3 years. These men had served with me there, hadn't they? I checked our orders. The parchment had changed. The date was exactly 1 year ago. The box grew heavier. We reached Marseille on schedule. No problems docking. No customs issues. The portmaster welcomed us like old friends. "Good to see you again, Brother Jacques," he said. Same mission as last year. I'd never met him before. We rode north. The changes came faster now. Mark's armor was different each morning. Felipe's horse changed color overnight. Robert grew a beard, then didn't have it, then had it again. They still didn't notice. In Lyon, an innkeeper recognized us. "The 6 Templars," she said, "with the box, just like last spring. We'd never stopped there before." The box was so heavy now, I could barely lift it. 3 days from Paris, I found a logbook. Every Templar way station kept one. This one listed our group. Same names, same number of horses, from exactly 1 year ago. That night, I watched my companions sleep. Their faces shifted in the firelight, features rearranging. changing, becoming different men, then changing back. I checked my own reflection in my sword blade. My face stayed the same. For now, the box was burning hot against my leg. 2 days from Paris, we met. Another Templar patrol. They recognized us. Brothers, their captain said, "Didn't you complete this mission last year?" Before I could answer, my companions responded in unison. "We are completing it now." Their voices were different. Wrong. That night, I watched them change completely. Different faces, different bodies, different men, but still wearing my companions' armor. Still answering to their names. Still thinking they were Mark, Felipe, Robert, Jean, and Guillaume. The box burned through my saddlebag. One day from Paris, I finally understood. We had made this journey before, many times. Every year, the same box, the same route. Each time, 5 nights left Jerusalem with me. Each time, they changed along the way. Became different men. But I stayed the same. The only constant. The boxkeeper. I took out the keys that night. The iron was hot to the touch. 3 locks, 3 keys. I opened the box. Inside was a single piece of parchment. On it, a list of names. Hundreds of names, all Templar knights. Every knight who had ever escorted this box, 5 at a time, year after year. At the bottom of the list, today's date, and 6 names. Jacques de Molay, Marc de Villiers, Philippe de Gandy, Robert de Sable, Jean de Cressy, Guillaume de Nogaret. But those last 5 names were changing as I watched. Letters rearranging, becoming new names. New knights, new faces, new bodies, but the same souls. The same mission, the same journey, forever. My name stayed the same. We reached Paris at dawn. The temple gates opened for us. The Grand Master was waiting. The same man who had given me the box in Jerusalem. But his face was different now. "Welcome back, Brother Jacques," he said. "Same time next year." I handed over the box. Still hot, still heavy. My companions dismounted. Their faces still shifting. Bodies still changing. Becoming the next 5 knights who would make the journey. I looked at my reflection in a window. My face was finally starting to change. The box was waiting. The journey would begin again tomorrow. Different faces, different names. Same box, same route, same mission, forever. I am Brother Jacques de Mar. I have always been. Brother Jacques de Mar. I will always be Brother Jacques de Mar. The box is waiting. Would you like to become one of my companions? Your face will change, but that doesn't matter. The journey must continue. The box must move, forever. The bells rang every night at midnight. 9 deep tolls that echoed across the sleeping fortress of Acre. The problem was, the bell tower had been sealed for 20 years. I am Sergeant Henry de Provence. The Castellan assigned me to investigate the bells 3 days ago. No one else would take the job. The tower stood at the heart of the fortress. Thick stone walls rose 100 feet into the Syrian sky. No doors, no windows, just solid stone. The original entrance had been sealed with heavy blocks. The mortars showed no cracks. No signs of tampering. Nothing to explain how the bells rang every night. I started my investigation in the archives. Brother Thomas, the keeper of records, went pale when I asked about the tower. There was an incident, he said. 20 years ago. A ritual. He pulled out a leather-bound volume. The pages were brittle with age. His hands shook as he turned them. 9 knights went into the tower that night, he read. None came out. The records were incomplete, pages missing, words scratched out, but certain details remained. 9 senior knights, a secret ritual, something about calling to the other side. They sealed the tower the next day, blocked the entrance, posted guards. The bells started ringing 1 year later. I interviewed the night guards first. They all said the same thing. The ringing comes from inside, one told me. Like something's pulling the ropes from below. Below, I asked. He made the sign of the cross. There's chambers under the tower. Old ones, from before we built the fortress. I checked the plans. Nothing showed chambers beneath the tower. But the plans were old, incomplete. That night, I stood watch. Midnight approached. The fortress grew quiet. The first toll hit like a physical blow, deep, resonant. Wrong, I pressed my ear to the tower wall. The stone vibrated with each toll. 1, 2, 3. The sound was wrong. Bells ring from top to bottom. These rang from bottom to top. 4, 5, 6. Like something pulling the ropes from below. 7, 8, 9. In the silence that followed, I heard something else. Voices chanting, coming through the stone. I spent the next day searching for records of the underground chambers. Found nothing. But I did find more about the 9 knights. Their names were listed in a sealed document. Geoffroy de Saint-Amand, Hugh de Payens, de Montbard, Godfried de Saint-Aldemar, Payon de Montdidier, Archambaud de Saint-Amand, Hugh de Saint-Amand, Hugh de Champagne-Rossel, de Beaumont, Gondomar, de Saint-Amand, all founding members of the Templar order, all present at its creation, all supposedly dead for 100 years. That night, the bells rang again. I stood closer to the tower, pressed both hands against the stone. The chanting was clearer now. Latin words, an invocation, but backward, reversed. My hands went numb where they touched the stone. The cold spread up my arms. I stumbled back, fell. The chanting followed me. 9 voices, 9 knights, calling through stone and time. The next day, I found the sewage plans. Old Roman drawings. They showed something. A passage, narrow, running under the tower. It took 6 hours to find the entrance. A metal grate behind the stables. Rusted, heavy. I waited for nightfall. For the bells. At the first toll, I opened the grate. The passage was dark, wet, big enough to crawl through. I lit a torch, started crawling. 2, 3, 4. The passage sloped down. The bells grew louder. 5, 6. Water dripped from the ceiling. The torch sputtered. 7. The passage opened into a chamber. Circular. 9 wooden posts in a ring. 8. 9 ropes hung from the ceiling. They ran up through holes in the stone, up to the bells above. 9. The ropes were moving, pulling themselves up, ringing the bells. But that wasn't what made me scream. 9 figures stood in the chamber. 9 knights in ancient Templar armor, their hands on the ropes. Their faces were wrong, twisted, like they'd been underwater for 100 years. They turned to look at me, spoke in those backward Latin voices. "Welcome, brother. We've been waiting." They told me everything. The real founding of the order, the true purpose of the bells. They weren't calling to the other side. They were calling something through, something old, something that had helped create the order, something that was almost ready to return. They needed one more night to complete the circle. One more bell to ring. One more rope to pull. Join us. They said, help us bring it back. I ran, crawled back through the passage, sealed the grate. But I can still hear them. Every night, the bells still ring. 9 tolls. Waiting for the 10th. They've started calling my name now. In those backward voices, every night the passage seems wider. The grate looser. The bells ring louder. 9 tolls. Waiting for the 10th. I wrote this report so someone would know, would understand. If you're reading this, I'm probably already down there, standing at the 10th post, pulling the 10th rope. The bells are ringing as I write this. 9 tolls. Soon there will be 10. Don't try to find us. Don't try to stop it. Just listen for the bells. When you hear 10 tolls instead of 9, you'll know. It's coming back. We're bringing it back. All of us, forever. The bells are calling. 10 tolls now. Can you hear them? The footsteps always came at midnight. Regular, measured. The sound of armored boots on stone. Then silence. Then whispers through the confessional screen. I am Brother Etienne, chaplain of the Templar way station, on the road to Santiago de Compostela. 3 months ago, they assigned me to hear confessions during the winter season. The chapel was small. Stone walls, wooden roof, 6 rows of benches. The confessional stood in the corner, dark oak worn smooth by time. The first night was normal. Travelers seeking absolution. Templars confessing minor infractions. Standard sins. Then midnight came. I heard the footsteps first, heavy, deliberate, coming down the center aisle. The chapel was empty. I could see all 6 rows of benches from my side of the confessional. No one was there. But the footsteps continued. Closer, closer. The confessional curtain moved, rustled like someone had entered the penitent's side, still empty. Then the whispers started. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. The voice came through the screen, clear male, speaking Latin with a Norman accent. But no one was there. It has been 1 day since my last confession. My hands gripped the worn wooden armrests. Sweat ran down my back despite the winter cold. I confess to the sin of pride. I confess to the sin of disobedience. I confess to the sin of betrayal. The voice grew stronger. Other whispers joined it. Different voices, all confessing the same sins. I fled the confessional, ran to my cell, didn't sleep. The next night, the same thing happened. Footsteps at midnight. Empty confessional. Whispered confessions. But this time, I stayed. Listened. The voices told me things. Secrets. Things about the order that I never knew. Things no one was supposed to know. Hidden vaults beneath every Templar fortress. Secret ceremonies performed at midnight. Ancient relics that the church had never seen. Rituals that were older than Christianity. Each night, more voices joined the confession. More secrets spilled through the screen. I started writing them down, filling pages with forbidden knowledge. During the day, I searched the archives, cross-referenced the whispered confessions with official records. Everything matched. Names, dates, places, all correct, but these records were secret, sealed. How did the voices know? 1 week in, I recognized a voice. Brother Martin de Torres, a Templar knight, who had stayed at the way station last summer. He had died 3 months ago in battle. I checked the death records, confirmed it. I was hearing confessions from the dead. More familiar voices joined each night. All dead Templars, all confessing secrets they had kept in life. Some had died recently, Some had been dead for decades, all of them whispering through the screen, all of them sharing forbidden knowledge. Then I recognized another voice, my own. It was confessing things I hadn't done yet, sins I hadn't committed, secrets I didn't know, but would know soon. The voice described what would happen, what I would do, what I would learn, what I would become. I tried to stop going to the confessional, tried to avoid the midnight confessions, but the voices followed me, whispered to me in my cell, in the refectory, in the chapel during Mass. Dead Templars, future versions of myself, all confessing, all revealing secrets. I started to understand why they chose me, why they were telling me these things. I was becoming something else, something more than a chaplain, a keeper of forbidden knowledge, a repository of secret truths. The confessions were changing me. Each night, each whispered secret transformed me further. I could feel it happening. My thoughts weren't entirely my own anymore. Other memories crept in. Memories of battles I never fought, ceremonies I never attended, secrets I never learned, but would learn, had learned, was learning. Time meant nothing in the confessional. Past, present, and future flowed together in those whispered confessions. Last night, something changed. The footsteps came, as usual. The whispers started. But this time, they told me the final secret, the true purpose of the order, the real reason for its creation, what we were preparing for, what we had always been preparing for, what I was becoming part of. I can't write it here, can't speak it aloud, but I understand now why the dead confess, why they chose me, why I'm writing this. You're reading this because you're next, the next confessor, the next keeper of secrets. The footsteps will come at midnight. The whispers will start. Your own voice will tell you what you'll become. Don't fight it. Don't run. Listen. Learn. Remember. The dead have so much to tell you. I know. I'm one of them now. Listen for my footsteps at midnight. Listen for my whispers through the screen. I have so many secrets to share, so many confessions to make, so many sins to reveal. The confessional is waiting, empty, but not for long. I can hear the footsteps now. Can you?